Hot takes are everywhere, but they're often uninformed, and major news is biased. We've had enough of hot takes. We want informed takes. Join Kevin Briggins and Devin Smith as they have rational conversations about domestic politics, geopolitics, and military affairs. Things will get interesting as they bring in expert guests, even from across the aisle. Grab your favorite drink, get comfortable, and hop into the chat. It's time for Informed Takes.
Welcome, everybody, to Informed Take. I am Kevin Briggins. He is Devin Smith, and we are glad that you guys are back with us for another week. Oh man, how you been?
Been good, man. Been busy. And man, I tell you what, it's never a dull moment with the Trump administration. But my goodness, the last week, what on earth?
Yeah. 4 years, man. 4 years. We can make it. We can make it.
I thought to myself, early on when I saw some of the meltdown, which, 2016 got us a little bit used to the, progressive meltdown. But, man, I tell you what, this dude's moving at breakneck speed. We're going to talk about a lot of that stuff today, but this going to be a long 4 years if you don't like it, baby. It's going to be a long 4 years.
It is. I'll be honest, man. I had to get out of some groups I was in, some private, like some personal, like messenger groups and text message groups, because I was like, I cannot deal with y'all for 4 years melting down and spamming the text message group with all kind of nonsense, like losing their minds. I'm like, I'm not doing this for 4 years, so I had to just leave the group because it was just ridiculous,
I respect that. I just choose to remain silent. I choose to remain silent in some of these groups because I know, like, they're putting their political opinion out there. If I put mine in there, I know that I'm literally tossing a grenade. And so I'm just like, you know what? I'm just going to stay quiet. Yeah. Some of the group chats you can't leave.
Yeah, that is true. That's true. And this thing is, I don't mind the other opinion. It is, you are literally throwing a fit and acting a nut over every syllable he says. Like, I'm not doing that for 4 years.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah, it's not worth it. No, I totally feel you on that, man. How are you doing? How are you doing, man?
I'm good. As you guys can see, you can see me, and I'm not frozen. And we got it fixed. I got the squirrels on the wheel running a little faster.
Man, I tell you what, it's a good thing you got it fixed this week, man, because I told y'all don't know. I told Kevin, I was like, listen, man, we just gonna have to embrace this at a certain point, and I'm gonna have a filter that just makes him look pixelated no matter what. and one day I'm gonna print out like a mask that you can wear around where your whole face is pixelated. I still might do that. You're not out the woods. I might still do that.
Yeah, but I'm just glad to have it fixed, man. It was the most frustrating thing ever. You paying for high speed fiber and you just not getting it, and it was just frustrating.
Well, but when you live in the Taj Mahal, you can't expect that Wi-Fi signal to stretch. You got one access point. You over here asking it to stretch a mile. Come on, brother.
True. But hey, before we get started, I gotta say it. May the 4th be with you.
May the 4th be with you, indeed. So I'm a big Star Wars nerd. I have like Star Wars Lego sets. You've been in my office. I got Star Wars Lego sets in here. I got all kinds of stuff. But today was the first day that I saw something I had never seen before. Somebody posted a meme that said, "May the 4th be with you," and instead of Star Wars, it was Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the furnace, and the 4th was Jesus.
Yeah,
it was fire. Yeah. I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's amazing!" I had to send that out.
Cool. That's a cool spin on it. Yeah,
and it's on Sunday. How about that? It's on the Lord's Day.
Yep, absolutely. But I'm Baptist, but I'm Reformed, so I do have a
Amen.
drink.
Woo! You got to
So
tell us about that. You got to tell us about this drink, man. Oh my goodness.
yeah.
I'm
So
full screening you
once
for this
again,
drink.
yeah. So Shalonda came through again. You know, she got the is mango cranberry. She said with a splash of watermelon with tequila, and she's got my little lime on there, and it's fizzy on top. I don't know what she did, but it's a little cute mixed drink. So yeah, that's what I'm sipping on, man.
Listen here, man. I'm gonna need.
Man, that's good.
I'm.
Yeah.
We gonna have to work out. I'm gonna have to get an expense account set up. Okay, I'm gonna get an expense account set up. I'm gonna need Shalonda to ship me a drink. I'm gonna pay her money for the bartending and the shipping, so she can ship me a drink. I got to get that past Congress, but I'm gonna need that, man. I'm gonna need that. My drinks are. How can I top that? How can I come anywhere close to that right there?
I don't
can't
know,
touch
man.
that.
It's good. It's good. And so, yeah, man. So, are you drinking on anything tonight? You got anything?
I got some water, bro. I was up there. I was trying to make sure that my wife wasn't too mad at me. I was up there trying to cook dinner before I set up the show. So I'm just drinking water, but my house has
That's
peace
good,
in
man.
it. So
That's good. That's good. You hydrate. That's good, man.
you know, in case I need to run.
Oh,
Man.
what's up, Matt? What's up, Katie? What's up, Claire? Yes, it does look like Santa. It does. Got the green, the red, and
It does.
it's a
Oh my
Christmassy
goodness,
drink.
man.
Yeah,
Oh my goodness, man. That's
it's good too.
Shalonda needs to bring that back. She needs to bring that back for Christmas. She needs to bring that
She
back.
does. I mean, it tastes like some elves made it. Like it's magical.
It's incredible, man. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Man. Best audience in the world. Thank you all for being here tonight.
Absolutely.
Thank you for being with us. We have some special treats for you tonight. Kevin, you want to tell them a little bit what we got in store?
Yeah, so we do have a guest on tonight, and we're going to talk about the Canadian election and the effects that our president may have had on it and on the outcome of it, and just the general feel. Just get the general feel of what's on the ground in Canada, and just the political fervor, I guess you can say, because it's spicy. Canada is spicy right now. I mean, Alberta. We're gonna talk about all of that stuff. Um, we're gonna grade Trump's first 100 days. We're gonna talk about that and just kind of look at various aspects of the executive branch and just kind of grade him on how he's done the first 100 days. Man, we got what is the X tonight? We got some good stuff in that, and we got the book of the week tonight as well. So,
we do, and it's one of my favorite books, man. I love that book.
Yeah.
That's one of those books that you listen to while you're lifting weights. You listen to that book while you're lifting weights. It just changes your whole mindset.
That is true. That is true. But do you want to introduce our guest?
Yes. So tonight we're joined by a brother who is in Canada as we speak. He's lived through the Trudeau years. He has become, highly politically aware, and he was hoping for a certain outcome this time. And so whenever I need perspective on what's going on with our neighbors to the north, he is who I call on. He is a music artist. He is a marketing business owner and a clothing designer. Welcome, Mr. Chopay Adeyemi.
Yo, howdy.
Boom,
Yo,
there it
how's
is.
it going?
I'm doing amazing, Devin and Kevin. Informed Take.
Yeah,
Man,
man.
I'm very honored and I'm very grateful. Devin is one of the one of the best people on planet Earth that I've been blessed to come in contact with. I feel as though very often I'm forced to punch above my weight category when he invites me into these things. But I'm like, hey, listen, if it's an opportunity to level up, I'll take it. But Devin, bro, like you keep stretching me and growing me, man. But like, I guess that's why the Lord pushed you in my life. Is like, this brother, you got to mature. You got to level up, man. I'm gonna put you around some hitters, man. Get you leveling up in life, bro. And so, when you asked me to be a part of this, obviously, like anything you need me for, I'm here to support. I'm here to be a part of it and give whatever kind of insight I can give. So, thank you so much. And Kevin also very eager to chop it up and just like learn from you guys and just let you guys know how things look on our side.
Yeah, that's man. Well, of course, honored that you decided to join us, because who better than somebody who is on the ground, and to give you a little background into how we met. Chopin and his family actually decided to live here in the United States for about 6 months, because the way that our agreements with Canada work. Somebody can come down here and they can be here for a certain amount of time without having to have a permanent visa, or work visa, et cetera. And so they wanted to try out living in the good old U.S. of A. And he chose Atlanta, and we got a chance to meet, and even got a chance to go to church together, and just became really good friends. And it started off, we wound up talking politics really the first time we met, and we were both kind of feeling each other out. It's like, okay, all right, where's this guy at? And we were both impressed with the level of nuance that we had to our politics, because that's what I was looking for. Whenever somebody comes off as conservative, I'm like, all right, what kind of conservative are you though? Are you
You should have your feet on the ground.
yes, and it's like, okay, are you like full MAGA, or are you a Liz Cheney conservative? Like, I'm trying to figure out, you know what I'm saying? Like, can that even be called a conservative? I don't know. But
Yeah,
but
especially in the church. Like, I always want to know: are you a Republican before you're a Christian, or are you a Christian first and then Republican comes second? Because some people, or in your mind, are both of those things one and the same? If you're a Republican, you definitely are a Christian.
yeah.
You just don't know, right? And so, I don't want to cut you off, but I was definitely on like, oh, where's this brother at? I'm trying to fill him out. And needless to say, I was like, yeah, this brother has.
Yeah. It was after a while, I was like, wait a minute, I done found one, man. This dude
Yeah.
he's legit. He's on the level. And so we started talking, and unfortunately, eventually, Chopin and the fam had to head back up to Canada land, and I mean, he still ain't sent me no maple syrup, but I'm gonna forgive you.
That's because I'm going to bring you with me when I show up.
but I mean, seriously, man. So Chopin and I had a chance to talk. We got a chance to chop it up for about an hour this past week after the news broke that Carney won the prime minister election. And I guess I'd like to start off with just asking you, how are you processing what happened? What do you think were the main factors in the outcome?
I still live here.
You don't
I
have to
still live
incriminate
here.
yourself.
I can say this: you could be honest, but you can also be measured. So how
Yes.
about that?
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Just-
So
We're not asking for you to we're not asking for you to go full behind the veil. We're not going to press you like that.
right, right. So anyone who's been following Canadian politics knows that for the first time in quite a while, the Conservative Party, as of like 4 months ago, before the end of 2024, was polling significantly ahead of the Liberal Party by up to 20 points. And this was unheard of. It was unheard of because within Canada, there's kind of this general understanding in the population, not all sections of the population, but the majority of, like a good chunk, more than 50%, kind of saw the Liberal Party as the default party of Canada. right? So much of the Canadian mentality, much of the Canadian zeitgeist is very progressive. Now, we do have parts of the country which are towards the west, places like Alberta. Alberta would be the strongest, kind of like the biggest stronghold, but places like Alberta, Saskatchewan, more rural communities or smaller provinces, if you will, not in terms of economic might, that's a whole nother conversation, but just in terms of when you think of population size, when you think of global influence. So you do have conservative strongholds here, but by and large, the Canadian mentality is very progressive. And so there's kind of this understanding like that the Liberal Party is our de facto party, right? So up until the most recent election, there were three major parties. Other minor parties as well, but three major parties: the Conservatives, the Liberals, and the New Democrats, the NDP. And they had other parties like the Bloc Québécois, the Green Party, the PPC, etc. But for all intents and purposes, the three big players are Conservative, Liberals, and NDP. And so when Trudeau got into government in 2015, he was supposedly a breath of fresh air. He came in with a great haircut and a great smile. And he promised this
Oh,
utopia.
he was your version of Obama.
No comment. I just, right, when it comes to American politics, I know my place. And I'm just like, I observe from a distance and I talk to Devin in private and then we sound off. Um, but yeah, he came in with a nice haircut, came in with supposedly progressive ideas. But as time went on, we began to realize that after three terms of Trudeau, the country wasn't any better. So, for context, Canada's economy only grew by 1.9% in the 10 years he was in control. And that's not 1.9% per year, that's 1.9% in total, right?
Wow.
Which is
Wow.
pretty much a standstill, economic
Yeah.
standstill.
Yeah.
Um, so our GDP per capita has also dropped to the lowest in the G7 during that time. So there's been an explosion of crime owing directly to a number of the policies, catch and release policies. So higher crime, higher unemployment, unaffordable housing. Everything got more expensive. Inflation hit record highs, or you get what I'm saying? And so
Yeah.
it took a while for the Canadian population to start to like just openly admit that okay, like Trudeau is not the guy, right? And that's not even like a contested issue anymore. But everyone from the blues and the reds. It's interesting in Canada, it's flipped. So conservatives are blue, liberals are red in Canada, right? But
Ah.
yeah, it took about 10 years for things to get so bad that even those who were trying to defend Trudeau just couldn't anymore because their lives were also being affected by just how bad everything was expensive, house was unaffordable. We had runaway immigration. We added something like 1 million people in the span of like a year. You know what I'm saying? And the housing supply didn't keep up. And so it was just broken on both sides, broken on the supply side, broken on demand side, long story short. So because of this, for the first time in I want to say over a decade, maybe more, the Conservative Party was up by 20 points. Right. And so at that time in like November or December, if there was an election, if an election was called, and there was the opportunity for an election to be called, but owing to the political maneuverings of the New Democrat Party, who were in coalition with the Liberals, they forestalled an election, right? They could have, a vote of no confidence could have been triggered. Anyways, if an election had been called at that time, it was unequivocally known that the Conservatives would have won, just like by a landslide. It would have been a blue wave without a question, because everyone was just so fed up, right? Even liberal, like I know certain family members who were like, I never thought I would vote Conservative. I'm a liberal, but they long story short, if there's one thing JT, like Justin Trudeau was really good at, it was playing political games. Like he really knew how to pull the levers of government, and so he prorogued Parliament. Pretty much means that he within his rights as a prime minister, he could ask the governor general to essentially suspend Parliament because things got so bad that he knew that the second we are back here, a vote of no confidence is going to be triggered. But if I can prevent them from meeting. So he prorogued Parliament and then stepped down because it just got, the noise became so untenable and everything, excuse me, really came to a head. His eventual downfall was triggered when his finance minister, Christopher Phelan, and his deputy prime minister, who was his right hand, essentially publicly resigned because this is really what happened. So the story goes, Trudeau, who Mark Carney had been his economic advisor for the last 5 years. So this is the big context here. Okay, so Mark Carney has been the economic advisor for Trudeau since like 2020 for the last 5 years, right? What we hear is that right before the Christmas break, Trudeau sends a message to Chrystia Freeland, who is his deputy prime minister slash finance minister. So she's like his right hand. She's really helped him. She helped him to accomplish a lot and cover a lot during his time. He essentially says to her, "Hey, I want you to." She was about to give the budget update for the upcoming year, right? So he pretty much said, and they were gonna post record deficits, like 20 billion above what they had previously projected, right? They projected
Yeah.
40 billion. What we eventually found out it was like 60 billion, right? And so on the eve, sorry, I know this is a long, long story, but I'm trying
No,
to give you
no,
guys,
you're
right?
educating us, man.
On the eve of the of her giving the budget update, he says to her, "I want you to give the budget update. And then after you basically take the arrows, once you give the budget update, I'm going to replace you with Mark Carney. He's going to become finance minister." Krisha says,
Wow.
Krisha says, no, thank you. And this is just one in a multiple, like in so many different political games that Trudeau has played during his time. Krisha says, no, thank you. And she issues a public resignation, essentially saying, for you to remove me from my post as your deputy prime minister is functionally you telling me you have lost your confidence in my ability to carry this role. And so she got ahead of the story and essentially resigned. And that just set off a firestorm. It was as though she gave liberty to every cabinet minister, every government worker who was upset, displeased with Trudeau's underperformance. And all of a sudden, all of the knives came out. And everybody finally felt free to say what they really felt. Because the message it sent was, if your right hand has lost confidence in you, the lady who was taking arrows for you, who was taking jabs, if she resigned so publicly, that just confirms what we already know to be true. You are no longer fit to lead the country, lead the Liberal Party, let alone the country. And so that was the beginning of his end. And then like his approval ratings were in the single digits. So what he does, this is right before the Christmas holiday. He essentially comes after Christmas, after the Christmas holiday, says, sorry, just after or slightly before, but during this time where there was a pause, he comes on, announces he's going to resign. Also asked to prorogue Parliament. He says, "I'm going to resign once we're able to find a suitable replacement to lead the Liberal Party." Now, here's like the interesting thing, because he's currently the Prime Minister and the head of the Liberal Party. If he resigns before an election, whoever replaces him as the leader of the Liberal Party automatically becomes the prime minister of the country, right? And so what
Yeah.
happened is that he played this masterful game where he says, I intend on stepping down once we're able to find a replacement. In the meantime, I'm also going to prorogue Parliament so Parliament cannot meet. So what essentially, yeah, exactly. Because again, if Parliament meets, he will be voted out. It'll trigger a snap election, and the Liberals will lose power. They like the Conservatives would have won. Everybody knows that as early as January. So he says, "I intend on stepping down once we find a suitable replacement." And I asked the Governor General to prorogue Parliament. I'm proroguing Parliament until what was it, March? We're in May right now, like March 26th, I believe, until March. So yeah, until March 26th, right? So what that then does is that it triggers a liberal race where now they're trying to find a new leader for the Liberal Party. Long story short, Mark Carney, who, as we found out, was supposed to take the finance position that Chrystia Freeland was going to get pushed out of, Mark Carney is now, some people would say, elected within the Liberal caucus because the Liberal members get to vote as to who they want their new leader to be, right? So some will say Mark was appointed, some will say he was elected, some will say he was anointed. Wherever you fall on that, Mark Carney becomes the new Liberal leader of the Liberal Party, and in so doing, instantly becomes the Prime Minister of Canada. Right. The moment he becomes a Prime Minister of Canada, keep in mind the Parliament is still prorogued. right? The moment he becomes a prime minister, he petitions the governor general to dissolve parliament and trigger a snap election because the prime minister can do that. And so,
I'm
so
just
by
gonna be
dissolving,
honest. From an American standpoint, like that just sounds crazy. Like we have
Yeah.
yeah,
nothing like that. The president
Wow.
can't
yeah,
do anything like that.
Yeah.
yeah. I know I'm giving you guys a long story, but this is the context. The
No,
context
no,
was,
we need the context.
Yeah, yeah. And
gotcha.
we'll
I'm
say
glad.
this is absolutely in the spirit of the show. We're called Informed Takes
Yes.
for a reason. This is exactly what our audience comes here for. This is fantastic.
I'm glad. Thank you. The reason all of this is important is to set the stage for how Carney was able to come seemingly out of nowhere and essentially become the legitimate prime minister of a country, right? This is the context. Liberals were ahead. Liberals are about to fall to the wayside, so much so that even like the existence of their party was in question. They run some political games, are able to get a new face, quote unquote, new face in place. The new place comes and uses the mechanisms of politics to trigger a snap election, right? And he called for an election, a very and how do I explain it? He could have called for an election to take place in 2, 3, 6 months, whatever. But the minimum amount of time required by Canadian law for a prime minister race is 6 weeks. So he calls for the minimum amount of time possible. And I think strategically that was because he knew that there was an advantage to riding on the momentum of this new face. And then a couple of interesting things happened. The removal of Justin Trudeau, that alone assuaged some minds. Because again, remember the context here is that for a lot of Canadians, the Liberal Party is the de facto party of Canada, right? And in as much as they will all admit that the last 10 years have been atrocious for the Canadian economy, a lot of people just tied the underperformance to an individual and didn't examine further and realize that a prime minister does not operate in a silo. He has ministers, he has an entire cabinet, all of whom are really the mechanisms and the gear of engine who really help keep the ship moving, right? And so, in a lot of people's mind, the fact that Justin was no longer there automatically meant that a lot of that could be forgiven. And so, Carney, as this fresh face, this political outsider, and he wasn't really an outsider because he was the economic advisor for Trudeau for the last 5 years, right? So, a lot of the policies that people didn't like, how it played out, Carney advised Trudeau on those things. Notwithstanding, he was branded as an outsider, and a lot of people just believed that. So the fresh face helped the Liberal Party begin to kind of like gain some, like reclaim some of that lost love, right? And then our guy to the south was, I would say, was the thing, probably the main thing that turned the election for us, which was what began as what we perceived as him just jesting and jabbing Trudeau, as calling him Governor Trudeau, the cherished 51st state. Admittedly, even I found it funny when it first started because I thought he was just trolling Trudeau, and I literally I put up a story and I said, guys, just watch. As soon as Justin steps down, he's gonna stop with this 51st state talk and he's gonna get serious. He's just trolling Trudeau. That's what I believed, but he wasn't just trolling, or maybe he was. Nobody really knows what Trump is thinking. But that rhetoric of Canada becoming the 51st state became the rallying call. Because again, oh yeah, I'm kind of mixing up my timelines. A couple of things were happening, right? So as Justin is stepping down, Trump is saying 51st state. And Trump, in essence, gave Trudeau a glorious exit because Trudeau was like just disliked in the country. But for the first time in a long time, he was saying something that everybody agreed with, which was like, we're never going to become the 51st state. And so Trudeau got to be this prime ministerial figure who was fighting American tyranny on his, like, that was his sunset. That was his swan song, if you will, right? And so owing to the Trump narrative and the prime minister, who just happened to be Trudeau at the time, saying what all Canadians believed, all of a sudden the Liberal Party started gaining popularity again because of the new conversation around our sovereignty. So take those two things. Our sovereignty is at threat from a foreign power, and a new face. And those two things were enough to carry the entire liberal campaign agenda. You get what I'm saying? That was the main the main pillar of Carney's campaign, right? I wonder if anybody actually counted the number of times he said the word crisis. He like, we're in a crisis. Our sovereignty is being threatened. The old relationship with the U.S. is dead. They want to take our land. They want our water. They want. It was a very direct message in which he portrayed Canada's sovereignty as being under dire risk of American takeover. And for a lot of people, unaffordability, right? The fact that you couldn't afford, that your kids can afford a house, that there's rampant crime, that the opioid crisis has also touched Canada, that there's unemployment, all of a sudden those things didn't matter to them. And big, bad, scary Trump became the big the only thing that mattered, right? And the fact that we were as vulnerable to the American tariffs because Canada hasn't self actualized and hasn't become as economically powerful as it could have been had we done things that should be done with our own natural resources. Like if we had been doing these things, we wouldn't be as vulnerable to American tariffs. Not that we wouldn't be, but we wouldn't be as vulnerable. All of those things didn't matter. We even heard people saying things like there's uncertainty in our economy because of the Trump tariffs. And a lot of us are scratching our heads and saying, you realize that investment, like business investment, fled Canada over the last 5 years, way before the Trump tariffs. So the economic uncertainty in Canada is not because of Trump's tariffs. It's because of policies that have already been in place. And so those two things were enough to carry such that the conservative message, which finally started to take hold, which was axe the taxes. Oh, there's a couple of things that happened. I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty details, but the conservative message of cut taxes, unleash our own economy through the exploitation of our own resources, tighten our borders, make life more affordable, all of those things which once resonated, all of a sudden were no longer priority for a big chunk of the population who now saw Trump as the biggest, perhaps only issue that Canada needed to address. And so that took Carney to a win. And now we will see what the future holds for Canada. But that is how we got to where we are today.
So let me see if I can sum it up. Canada had 10 years of stagnation, economic stagnation, through the Liberal Party's leadership.
Correct.
And they allowed a false hoax, something that has no possibility of even happening, become the reason that they doubled down once again on the same policies that have failed them for the last 10 years. Is that kind of the gist of what happened?
As some people would very succinctly summarize it. Yeah, I could give that headline. I did feel it important to give kind of like the full context. But there are a lot of people who really believe, who really, really believed that Trump was about to come and take Canada and become the 51st state.
Yeah, I
If
mean
we if we don't
the
have
same
somebody
people
who
that
can,
it's just like people in the US, and it tends to be the liberals and the progressives that believe things like Trump's going to rip up the Constitution. He's going to make it to where he stays in office and never goes anywhere. It's like, uh,
yeah,
how?
yeah.
Like,
Right. How's
I
he
mean,
gonna do that?
I can't speak to I can't speak to the U.S., but I can kind of like break down some of the demographics for you. So, can the I'm being very careful with my words. I'm just gonna say the facts as it is, right?
yeah.
So, media plays a big part in informing people, informing or misinforming or disinforming, however you want to put it, right? So the advantage that the U.S. has as an outsider, a lot of people will say like the political landscape in the U.S. is so divisive and it's a powder keg. I would say like maybe there is some truth to that, but at least both sides have enough money and ammunition and a big enough sections of the population to duke out their ideas in the court of public opinion. right?
Mhm.
And so the population have as much access to CNN as they do to Fox News in the US.
True.
You just got to
True.
flip the station, right? And the reason y'all can do that is because, to my knowledge, CNN and Fox are both private companies, and they have to self fund either through fundraising or selling ad spots or whatever, right? And so they literally
Yeah.
have to live and die on their own ability to satisfy their demographic.
That's
Canada
right.
has no such thing, right? So our major media outlets, with the biggest one, are funded by the government. So the
Oh, that's
biggest
true. Oh,
so that is not a statement of ethics. I'm not even giving a moral claim of how I feel about that. I'm just telling you the fact of what it is, and I'll let you arrive at your own conclusion. There are CBC, CTV, CTV. I hope I'm not forgetting it alone. CBC is the biggest one. Then there's CTV, and there's City TV, and there are a couple other small stations, and then there's CPAC. But yeah, but the major stations are all funded by the government, and the biggest one is CBC. And I have to say this just because it's the truth, right? But I've worked with the CBC, not on staff, but like I've been a part of the CBC music department. It's helped me in my career, in my music career, right? So I'm just gonna put that out there, right? So no one's like, "Oh, gotcha," but you did work with the CBC, like that is true. But what is also true is that CBC gets 90% of their funding from the federal government, right?
that's
As a
that's
matter of
crazy.
fact, it's absolutely crazy. All of the other stations are subsidized in other ways. Some it's 50%, some it's 60%. CBC is 90%. As a matter of fact, during Carney's campaign, he promised an additional $150 million in funding for them should he get into office. Now, I'm not going to say that's anything. I'm just going to say they already get about $1 billion a year, which incidentally is more than NCIS, which is the National, I think, Council for Intelligence and Security. So, like one of our cybersecurity organizations, the CBC got more funding than one of our national security organizations. That's another conversation. But um, I think a question that should be asked is, if the people, can you really trust someone to hold the person who's cutting their paychecks? Can you really expect them to hold them accountable,
Of
right?
course not.
And
Yeah.
I especially went on the campaign trail. He promises you an additional 150.
Yeah.
Meanwhile,
No way.
the opponent is saying, Poilievre said during his campaign, if I get into office, I will defund the CBC. Says I'll defund all of these other organizations. They should go and have to fundraise the way all like what in Canada is called alternative media, often deemed as alt right, because there are other media outlets here in Canada that live primarily online because they do what your stations do. They fundraise, they sell ad spots, they do everything they need to be self sustaining. But our legacy media is funded by the government, right? And so one opponent is saying I'll give you 150 million more. The other opponent is saying I'm going to defund you so you can like compete like everybody else, right? And I'm telling you, like I watch CBC because I try not to live in a silo. So I'll watch CBC and I'll watch the other guys and try to see who's covering what. And I'm not going to say there weren't critical moments of Carney on CBC. What I can tell you is that was the exception to the rule. Do you get what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And so
Yep.
to
Yeah.
bring it back to the which I mean isn't which is not surprising. It's not surprising, right? So
No.
to bring it back to the earlier conversation, the Canadian demographic is like when you think of like who's consuming media, right? So if the average Canadian is getting the news purely from legacy media, they're getting the perspective, which is yes, liberal policies haven't worked for the last 10 years, but this new guy is telling me something, so I'm just going to believe him because I have nothing else to believe in or nothing else to corroborate this with, right?
Yeah.
Furthermore, when you look at the demographics of the country split up by age, there was actually an age divide, right? Because a lot of the liberal policies disproportionately affected young people, right? So if there's higher crime in your neighborhood, if there's higher unemployment, if you can't afford a house, those 18, 19, 20, right up until 55, who are in the industry making like industry excuse me, building window of their lives where they're looking to buy a house, where they're looking to settle down. If they can't afford anything, it's a big issue for them. Whereas the boomers, quote unquote, those individuals already have their houses and their houses are paid off, who aren't feeling, they felt some of it, but by and large, they were a little removed from the effects. When you look at the voting data, 55 and
Yeah.
up voted liberal,
Yep. I
55
saw
and
that.
down voted conservative. It just so happens that they are the bigger population, the bigger chunk of the population. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
So like, how does what you say happen? How does it didn't work for 10 years, but now this thing that, as you say, is never going to happen, namely the US taking over Canada, I'm just going to believe that's an issue. How can people believe that? Well, they can believe it if number one, they're in an age demographic, and number two, if their diet of information is primarily government funded
Yeah.
media.
Yep.
That's how that happened.
Yeah. And you mentioned, so I saw a thing where 55 and up, you can see the age difference. Those were the people in terms of what their biggest concerns were. It was the
Yeah,
Trump stuff for the older crowd,
yeah,
um, versus the economic stuff, which the younger crowd favorite as
yeah.
their biggest issues.
I said,
And
now,
then even in the
obviously, that's not
US, go ahead.
sorry. Now, obviously, you're going to have older people who voted conservative and younger people who voted liberal. Absolutely, one
Yeah.
of my old friends voted liberal. So of course you're going to have that. But looking at like broad stats, that's exactly how it
Yeah.
played out.
Yeah. And I would say even here in the US, the older demographic is more likely to watch cable news. You know,
Mm,
those the younger people typically get their news from social media
yeah,
and various
yeah.
other ways. It is the older group that is stuck to the legacy media. And
The legacy
so,
media.
yeah, basically
Mm.
everything you said, it makes sense that the election went that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, but again, but what's also still interesting, and correct me if I'm wrong here, your legacy media has both right and left.
It
It
does.
does. It's interesting here because most of legacy media here leans left. Most of the legacy media here leans left. So Fox uh, is really, as far as like legacy media goes, Fox is really the only one that, if we're talking about broadcast media, because
Yeah.
print print's its own animal, but Fox is the only one that leans right. I wish that we had somebody who was a little more objective. It's what we try to be on this show. But I will say that Fox has larger viewership now. Their
Mm.
viewership is larger than
Oh yeah,
the
they crush
the
everybody in ratings.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and it didn't used to be like that. It didn't used to be like that. But now, I
That's
mean,
interesting.
they crush everybody now, which is interesting.
I
One
wonder
station
I wonder if that would
really
be
gets them.
attributed to, because you do have CNN, ABC, MSNBC. I know all of those guys are typically left leaning, right?
Yeah.
Versus Fox. I would want to hear why you think that is. Why is Fox now all of a sudden having this resurgence and crushing all of these guys in ratings, even though people who consume legacy media have access to both?
I'll go first, Kevin. I want you to give your
Go
opinion
ahead.
too.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of it has to do with people realizing that the news that they got was of a certain opinion,
Yeah.
and I attribute a lot of it to that. Is that you had a lot more people start to become more conservative in their thinking as time
Mm.
went on,
Yeah.
because it started to become more evident that there was a one-sidedness to the typical authoritative voices across print and broadcast media. So the New York Times,
Yeah.
Washington Post,
Yeah.
NBC, CBS, ABC. I mean, all of them lean left, and so I do think that there was, as we started to see certain cultural movements bear their fruit, and people started to realize that those movements were coming up bankrupt. I do think that pushed more people to looking at Fox, and maybe people who were not engaged before also started to look at Fox. I think Fox, pulled some moves. In my opinion, they do have, their talking heads are very, very popular. If we're going to talk about who's actually getting the ratings, it's the talking heads. Everybody's not tuning in to watch Fox's objective reporting. They're tuning in to listen to Tucker Carlson and Hannity and Laura Ingraham and et cetera. And so I think that also, like, those people started speaking to popular frustrations, and that got them ratings. This is my hypothesis. I don't know these things for sure. I'm just paying attention to some of the cultural things that are happening and drawing connections. But the other thing that I will say is that I think that COVID and the way that COVID was handled by the media here in America pushed a lot of people to the right. It pushed a lot of people to the right. That's how Trump, to be honest with you, that's one of the major reasons why Trump won, is because we saw the media basically. What was it? Stephen A. We played a Stephen A. clip on here. Stephen A. is like, why every time I turn around, was it another thing that y'all called a right-wing conspiracy wound up being right? Ain't y'all tired of being wrong? Y'all tired of being wrong yet? Every time they open their mouth, all I got to do is wait a little while, and it turns out that the right-wing conspiracy theorists were correct. Why does that keep happening? I mean, I think that's why.
Yeah. And you see, here's man, like, I think a lot of that is also true in Canada. I think a lot of that is also true in Canada because we see an interesting thing happening. We see a lot of the right wing voices, they live online. And so when you look at like the views of legacy media online versus the right wing, it's no comparison. It's just no comparison. Like whether it's the Rebel News or True North or even Jordan Peterson or some of these other like individuals, and I can go through a list of them, their numbers are killing. Now, there's no way of telling if those are all Canadians or is Canadians and Americans or international. So it's like that number is probably Canadian and international, but just on a one-to-one level, we know that the conservative viewpoint is getting a lot of traction online. But what's interesting is that when you say Stephen A. will say like, man, why is it that every time I turn my head, something you guys considered a conspiracy theorist is coming out to be true? That's being said on national television. The difference here is that all of these ideas that were presented as conspiracy or alt-right, once they're proven to be materially true, there is no recanting of the previous denigration, right? There is no correction. There is no apology. There is nothing. And so individuals just are left with this perception of this thing, unless they actually go and investigate themselves, right? And then an interesting thing has happened over the last 4 years as well, where something called Bill C-11 was introduced, right, which is meant to combat what the liberal government calls misinformation and disinformation. So, in the interest of not having Canadians consume misinformation and disinformation, one of the effects that came out of this was like now Canadians don't have access to certain pieces of news on social media.
Man,
Certain Instagram accounts they don't have. And I'm not making this stuff up. This is not conspiracy.
No, you're not. I will say this. One thing I'm learning as an American is that our closest allies, whether it's Canada or whether it's our allies in Europe, are not as like-minded in values as we thought. Like that, as an American, that's mind-blowing. Like the fact that your media is government funded, it's like that's China. That shouldn't be Canada.
That's China. That's Russia. I mean, right? Like the fact that they're blocking certain internet accounts. They're blocking your access to certain internet accounts. I mean,
because it's protecting us from misinformation and disinformation, Devin.
That's
Oh
see,
my
yeah. So let's
goodness.
go. I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna name that. I'm gonna name that the 1984 bill. That's what I'm gonna call it. That's the 1984 bill. And I mean, so our former president tried some mess like that. Secretary
Right.
Mayorkas was trying to implement that stuff.
Yeah.
And the amazing thing, the other thing I'll note here, and Kevin, I'm interested in your opinion on this as well. One of the big things here is that new media podcasts, like what we're doing right now, this live stream, new media now absolutely rivals legacy media in its reach, in its ability to influence. I mean, you
And
saw
no, it
the
doesn't. No, it doesn't rival it. It destroys it. Like
Mm.
word
Joe Rogan kills MSNBC or
Yeah.
CNN.
100%, dude.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, he's getting millions and millions of views. And,
Yeah.
or for instance, let's say when Tucker Carlson was doing his thing on Twitter, man, he would have 20 million views.
Yeah.
Whereas you got shows on MSNBC, not, in, 150,000, 200,000 views a night.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, it's,
Yeah.
it's just not even close.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and so when you have things that are positioned as conspiracy theories, and then Canadians have no ability to pursue or reduce, maybe not no, reduced ability to pursue the truth because what they have access to on the internet has been restricted. All you're left with is the perception that was promulgated to you by legacy media, right? And so you have a number of individuals who aren't as intentional in trying to seek out the alternate view, right? And trying to say beyond conspiracy, beyond as much as possible, what are both sides saying? You know what I'm saying? And Carney has been
yeah.
clear that he intends on strengthening C11. He said that on the campaign trail, right? Um, yeah, and so there is a
That's
rise. I will say this. I will say this as well. Time will tell because even though the conservatives lost, the conservatives had the greatest showing in, I want to say, Canadian history, right? So, and this is what was very difficult to compute because, like the big political rallies that you guys have,
yeah.
that's not a thing in Canada.
Yeah.
Like Canadians are much more subdued, except Paul Revere did that. Something like he was doing rallies with like 5,000, 15,000, 12,000 people. And for you, that's just another day on the campaign trail. But for Canada, that's like this doesn't happen, right? And so
Yeah.
even though they lost, what he did do was that he drew more people into the Conservative Party because he was just speaking to the very real concerns that people have, right? Now, it
Yeah.
just so happens that, again, the largest section of the population are seniors and boomers, right? And so between they and some other groups, they swung they won. But again, it was only by a minority. And so if you're trying to think of like what caused the conservatives to have such a resurgence in what is by and large a progressive country, because it is a very progressive country, and we can tease out the conservative platform even further. It's like, yeah, it's not as right as the Republicans. That's fine. We're starting from where we're starting, right? You can ask a question like, why did the Conservative Party rally? Why did so many people join the conservative fold? Why did the Liberals only scrape by another like narrow minority? What was it? Is it just a charismatic leader, or were they actually speaking to the real concerns of people? And I say it's both, because people had 10 years of these policies where no matter how you try to spin it, everyone just knew this is bad. Like this country, like it's not going well. And some people were hoping that, okay, after 10 years, after the same promises, like the reality of these promises fleshed out in real life have come to roost, and people would have had enough to like take back the keys to the kingdom, as it were, right? Which is what Americans did at the last minute, right? Alas, they didn't. And so the question I have is like, okay, will it take another 4 years? Like, what happens if now that he's in office, we're going to see like how things unfold? And I want to believe, I could be wrong. I'm actually hoping I'm wrong. I'm hoping that Carney actually restores Canada to the glory that it can be, right? But It's the same government. It's the same ministers. It's the same plan. Literally, it's the same. It's the same
Yeah,
pending
yeah,
plan.
they're not gonna unleash your energy because they're bought into climate change policies and all the
No,
same stuff that the left
there
does
were
here.
there are reports that the budget was prepared before Carney became a prime minister. And he looked at it, observed it, crossed some things, changed some things, and signed it off. So it's functionally the same thing, right? And so I'm wondering, will things get much worse, and where Canadians now met with this new opportunity, like okay, now we really know, and we're gonna. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah,
Will things have to get significantly worse before people reclaim the keys to the kingdom? Will it become too far gone? I don't know the answers to these questions. All I know
yeah,
is that um, it was surprising to a lot of people that after 10 years of a failed government, they would essentially elect the same government to put forth the same promises and practically the same plan. Um, but again,
Yeah.
the silver lining here is that the conservative voice grew and is higher than it ever was. Now, what that practically means, we don't really know. Time will tell. But there's something going on there. There's something going on there where they were able to tap into what people would call the far right. It's not the far right. It's just common sense, which is why. But again, that's how they do it. They'll try to brand you as far right, even though this guy is not saying anything different than what he was saying 3 months ago, where 90% of the population was saying like, yes, 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 you're right. He didn't. His message didn't change that much, and they were 20 points ahead of the liberals. So his message didn't change. All that changed was the leader the
Man,
yeah.
leader and like both
Hey,
like
man, you're in marketing. You know the power of a rebrand. They just
yeah, yeah,
rebrand
yup.
it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yup.
And sometimes I wanna believe that I would never insult the customer. I believe customers are smart and they're intelligent and they can smell crap from a
Yeah,
mile away. And yet at the same time, marketing is very, very powerful.
yeah,
Marketing is very, very powerful, and I've seen that time and again. And I never want to insult the customer, but what I also know is that wow, I knew it was powerful, but I've seen it in reality, right? But
yeah.
marketing is easier when you control both the means and the medium and the message.
Mm,
Yeah. Ooh,
yeah,
well said.
man.
That's very well said. I definitely think that uh, it's going to be interesting to see what happens because you described to me uh, an organization or a part of the government. It sounds a lot like our
Yeah.
congressional budget office, who talks
Yes.
about how certain budget policies are going to affect uh, uh, the economy, the country, et
Yeah.
cetera. And you had some really interesting things to say to me about
Yeah.
how direct, how blunt they were
Yeah.
about that. And I think you even said they were not fans of Polyev, um, and they
Oh, so
still
yeah.
said these things.
So the office of the Privy Council is a department of government that reports to the prime minister's office. They're one of the highest branches of their government, and all they do, one of the things they do, is they just give reports on the state of the country. And they are, in a sense, supposed to be nonpartisan. So we're just given the facts as it is. This is what we see. And again, they report to the office of the prime minister, regardless of who's in office, liberal, conservative. They report to the office of the prime minister. And they released a report towards the end of the not presidential, the prime minister, the campaign, right? And it essentially prognosticated on Canada's economic outlook over the next 15 years if things don't change. And when you say, first, I want to qualify what if things don't change means. What do if things don't change? What are some of the things that have happened over the last 10 years, right? So we have shuttled our energy sector, right? We have literally said no to billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars, right? We have business investment has fled Canada because businesses find it incredibly difficult to get anything done in the country, right? We let runaway immigration come, and we didn't have the housing supply meet the demand. building houses, even though we have more land than almost anywhere in the world, building houses is just way too expensive, such that developers even find it difficult to price houses fairly because it's so expensive for them, right? So there are some parts of the country where 60% of the cost associated with building a house are in government permits. 60%.
That's
40% is only
crazy.
labor parts. The other
That's
60% is government
crazy.
permit, right? And so you have all of these things, and not to mention the fact that we have a government that has been overspending and increasing our deficit year after year, right? We printed more money during the during the COVID pandemic than had been in like the last 100 years of the country, right? So
Yeah.
I already said the context at the beginning, right? So last 10 years of liberal government, these policies resulted in economic stagnation, right? 1.9% in 10 years, falling GDP per capita, lowest in the G7, right? Our GDP now, which the GDP of Ontario, which is our richest province, is lower than the GDP of Mississippi, which I believe is one of your poorest provinces. And that's, you know what I'm saying? So like at the beginning of the 10 years, Canadians were making something like, I want to say like, my numbers are going to be a little off, but this is the ballpark. Canadians were making something like I think 80% of what Americans will make now, something close to like 40 or 50%. So like we've been on a downward trajectory. So this is the context, right? And the
Wow.
office of the Privy Council, they report to the Prime Minister. They said if things don't change, we can. This is what we can expect by 2040 in Canada, right? These are their words. I promise you, I'm not making it up. They said we can expect that by 2040, downward social mobility will become the norm, right?
Wow.
The young people will give up on any hopes of owning a home, right? They said we can expect rampant poverty. And then the most harrowing part of their report, and I'm telling you, this is not from a fiction book, this was in their report. They said we can expect that things would get so dire that people can start foraging for their food and fishing on public lands to feed themselves. I promise you, this sounds like something from The Last of Us, but this was
Yeah.
in a government document. And they said this is the economic outlook for Canada if things don't change. And they report to the Prime Minister's office. So naturally, of course, it makes sense that nobody heard about this report save for the conservative leaning watchdogs who scour the government websites on a daily basis and say, hey guys, do you know the Privy Council just released this? But legacy media
Mm,
barely covered it. Prime Minister Carney's office barely covered it because they said in no uncertain terms, if things continue as such, it is not looking good for Canada. And so different voices try to sound the alarm and say, hey guys, like this is not a conservative party that's advocating. We're not just spinning tails. This is the government, literally, the sitting government right now, that reports to a liberal. They are issuing this report. Please, guys, please, just like, and that was one of the things that was most shocking to people who are paying attention to things like this, that when the costed plan was presented by the liberal platform, it's not only the same thing as before, the same C69 is not going anywhere, which is like the no new development. C11 is staying. Um, in fact, the attempt to fix the housing crisis, excuse me, involves, on one hand, he says decreasing government spending, but on the other hand, it says we're going to build a whole new arm of government to solve the housing crisis. So let me know
oh
how
my
you're going to
goodness.
decrease government spending, but build a whole new department that's going to start building houses. Make it make sense, but sure. Okay, cool. You get what I'm saying? And so um, when this report is released, conservatives are looking and saying, like, it's one thing if we came up with this. You would say we're being fantastical and we're smearing you guys. But when the Office of the Privy Council releases this document and it gets next to no airtime, and then the costed plan shows you it's not just the same as the last 10 years, it's actually more spending. So you're adding an additional $150 billion to our deficit. They call it investments. We can mince words. We can, you know what I'm saying? Anybody who's working in accounting know, like, you know how to like make it
Hey,
make
hey,
sense.
baby, it take money to make money.
You know, Exactly. But brass tacks, when all is said and done, Canada will be $250 billion in a deficit. And as soon as they release the platform, um, Bloomberg, and I forget this other, I want to say Fintra, not Fintra, I forget. Another party, like nonpartisan financial institutions have said, based on this spending plan, Canada's AAA rating is at significant risk of taking a hit.
Yeah.
And like this will not be good for Canada's credit rating. The fact that you're like, so the deficit that he's proposing is even higher than his predecessor. And so it's stuff like this. It's stuff like this that like just
Yeah.
we're like
I,
I don't understand.
I'm just gonna put it like this. You can't say this, but I'm gonna say it. The whole conspiracy theory thing is just out the window now.
Mm,
And I don't believe these people are that stupid. So I have to believe it's intentional. Right. And you say, okay, why would they do this to their own country? What are they trying to achieve? I just look at the World Economic Forum,
mm,
and it's like, okay, what are their goals? Their goals is to basically get past capitalism to some new system to which you will own nothing and you will be happy, right? But they have to crash the current system first.
yeah.
Um, yeah, and so there's no other, and we know Trudeau was very tied to the World Economic Forum.
Oh yeah,
So
And even
poster child.
and this whole climate change thing and all these policies that are supposed to be for climate change that are just
yeah,
really stifling economies.
right.
That's not
Well,
that I don't
it's
think it's
no
unintentional.
it's no conspiracy theory to just say what they've already said with their mouths, right? So,
Yeah,
Carney wrote a book called Values, and again, it, just if you want to know the person, listen to their words, which is the other thing as well. It's so funny when a lot of people were like, he's an unknown quantity, he's a fresh face, and we just say, guys, just read his book. He's saying Trump, just read his book. I'm not telling you to don't even listen to me. Just read the man's book and he'll tell you what's important to him. And he said in his book that for him the climate crisis is he said it on videos in his book is the singular most important issue in the world. And that every decision that every individual makes from institutions to individuals should prioritize climate change.
yeah.
Like that's
Too
his.
bad.
That's his.
Yeah,
It's not. It's not a conspiracy theory, right? He and I think Gerald Butts. Gerald Butts was one of the right hands in the inner circles of the Trudeau government. Literally said they believe that 75% of the fossil fuels on the earth need to stay in the earth and should not be mined. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's literally what they said. And so, in the presence, and it's also not a conspiracy theory to say like, no, Carney is a part of the WEF. Why? Because he said it. He's been at the conferences. Again, that's not a conspiracy theory, right?
yeah,
So all you have to do is just say, okay, so what are the implications of this? If we're not going to mine traditional fossil fuels because it's so detrimental to the environment, we can talk about that, but that's another conversation. But if we're going to do that, like, what is the alternative? Like, what's the actual alternative? Okay, the green energy right now. All we have to do is just look at other parts of the world where green energy has been implemented as a rule of law and just look at the effects and say, okay, cool. Are we in a position where we can completely, for the record, like we're all believers here and we all believe that stewardship is a thing. You get what I'm saying? So I don't think you
yeah,
should just go out just like polluting just because of my individual freedom. I believe that stewards of God's earth, we have a responsibility not to be wasteful, right? To take dominion, but in a way that demonstrates good stewardship, right? So I do think there is a place of being aware of what impact we're having on the environment. All right. I want to set that as a foundation. That said, um, climate catastrophizing. I don't know if that or alarmism. I think is the word I'm looking for.
Alarmism, yeah, that's the
yeah,
word. Yeah.
Alarmism is the word I'm looking for. We just have to really look at the data, and I know like people are going to argue on both sides of the aisle, but I mean at this point, what we can go off of is what we have. And what we know is that at this point, we don't have wholly green energies that can operate at nearly the level of efficiency that conventional energies can, right? And we can also look at the effects of conventional energy and talk about how the increase in CO2 is actually causing certain parts of the world to become more green because, hey, guess what? Plants like CO2. That's another conversation. But,
Right.
but,
Right.
but At face value, let's just say there's an issue there. All we have to do is just look at parts of the world that have attempted to completely wholesale traditional energy. What has been the effect? The effect has been, believe it or not, more emissions, more
That's right.
emissions. And why is it more emissions? It's more emissions because these sources, whether you want to talk about nuclear or hydrogen or some of the other places or some of the other forms of energy, are not as efficient yet. And so what they have to do is that in addition to the green energy, they have to build backup conventional energy, right?
Wow.
And
Yep.
so
Yeah.
what has happened is that a lot of these places, whether you're looking at UK or Germany or some parts of Europe, energy has become less reliable and has become more expensive,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And
That is
emissions
true.
are high. And emissions are
Man.
higher.
Oh yeah.
So I'm like, okay, you can make an argument like, okay, listen, if it's better ecologically, but it's more expensive, well, that's just a sacrifice some people have to pay. That's another conversation. But when it's neither more environmentally friendly because it's producing more emissions, nor is it economically friendly because it's 5 times more expensive, we have to ask ourselves, so what's this really for? Because it's not
Yeah.
helping the environment that you purport to be helping, and it's definitely not helping your citizens. So what's really at play here? Well, it just so happens that certain people make up a lot of money through these green programs.
Yeah.
I'll
Boom.
leave that.
Man. Man.
I'll
Man.
leave that.
You hit it.
Man, I tell you what, I don't know if y'all knew that Chopay was going to bring it the way that he did tonight. I mean, this is absolutely in the spirit of the show, man. Just
Absolutely.
you straight up gave us you schooled us tonight, man, on Canadian politics in general. I mean, I don't think we could have gotten a better picture of this any other way, man. This has been incredible.
Yeah, well, I love this country. I really do love this country. We immigrated here from Nigeria 25 years ago. And we came here because my parents believed that this country could provide for us things that my home country, unfortunately, just couldn't at the time. And the country looks very different now than it looked 25 years ago, right? And so I love this country and I want its prosperity. No matter where I end up, whether that's in Canada or on your side or anywhere in the world, I want Canada to thrive. You get what I'm saying? I want its citizens to thrive. And so my desire for Canada is its economic survival. Of course, as a believer, I have other, and this is another conversation I was having with people. Of course, I have ethical things and Christian values, but one of the things that this election really did for me is help me clarify, like, what do I believe the role of government is? And as much
Mm.
as there are certain principles that the conservative government, the Canadian conservative government, doesn't necessarily align with my Christian ethics, I had to ask myself the question, like, is the role of the government to reflect my Christian principles? Or is it the role of the church to be the church in the world, represent Christ, see justice, do good? That's an open question. I don't have the answer to that, right? But I say all
Yeah.
that to say that my desire for Canada is for a strong economy, right? I have other desires for it as well, but like at least during this election cycle, my desire was I wanted to emerge strong economically, right?
Yeah.
And it would seem to me that one party has failed, having been given that opportunity for over a decade, right? And the other party was bringing different ideas, but the country has spoken, right? And so to that end, I hope I am wrong. I hope the party in power now does better than they did over the last 10 years. My suspicion is that they won't, and that's not because I don't like them personally, but it's because they haven't in the last 10 years, and even their office said things aren't going to go well if they keep doing the same thing. And they
Yeah.
said, we're going to keep doing the same thing. So it's not even me hating on them, it's just your office said this. You guys said, screw the facts. We're doing it anyways.
Wow.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
And so I
I
love
mean,
this country, and I want it to thrive. I really want it to thrive, and I hope it does.
well,
But I don't.
my I'm just going to be say what I want. I would be like, hey, you can watch whether they thrive or not from across the border. We stealing you.
If I may make one more comment. If I want to be careful. Okay, so like if I end up in the U.S. in some capacity, because I do work, like I fly back and forth with friends for relationships. I have a business partner in the U.S., etc. It would be interesting because it would be bittersweet because Trump played a part in this.
Yeah,
Trump played a part in this, right?
he did.
And it's never my desire to come to the U.S. look like smiling as I look in the rear view mirror as I look at the flames that overtake Canada. I'm being dramatic, of course, right? But it would hurt because I think America is a great country, right? There is no perfect utopia in the world. As a believer, I am not of this world. There's no country I'm going to go to that's going to perfectly align. I'm waiting for the new heavens and the new earth. I know that. I'm not looking for any leader. Paul Revere is not my savior. He was not going to do it. Trump is not my savior. But I have enough, I think, biblical grounding on which to call good and bad, right? And so, to that end, America is a very great country, and America possesses a lot of strengths that Canada doesn't have, and vice versa. A lot of the things that I like, I believe in, rights and freedoms of the individual, individual liberties. The U.S. cherishes those things and will fight to the death for those things. And I admire those things, right? And so, there's a degree in which, like, I love the country. I love the United States. Devin, you and I have had this conversation many, many times, right? A big part of me feels aligned with the country in that way, and yet at the same time I feel like I've been betrayed in some ways by its current leader, right?
Yeah.
A leader who for all intents and purposes I despise his excesses, but just again on the basis of economics and things of that nature, I'll say like, okay, yeah, maybe he's better than Kamala in these areas, right? And then for that to happen, and then for him to essentially help architecture what I believe was a misfortune in our prime ministerial election, it hurts and it feels a bit like betrayal. You get what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
so to
Yeah.
that end, it's like I love the country, but it kind of hurts. It kind of hurts to see the role that Trump played in our current elections.
Oh, I've
But
been
that is,
I've been
Yeah, no, we
subdued.
feel you. You know, we feel you. I mean, we feel the same way. It's like a lot of times we just want him to shut up.
Yeah.
Just like be quiet, man.
Yeah.
Like because of like he doesn't a lot of times he doesn't understand the effects of his words. Like, and even not to just like Canada's detriment, he does to his own detriment.
Oh,
He
mm,
yeah.
just has no idea the effects of what he says.
Yeah.
And and so we feel you. I
Yeah.
just want to
yeah,
let you know
Yeah.
we feel you.
I'll say I had the same thought, Kev. Like as Chopin was kind of describing some of the effect of his words on that election, it just started to occur to me. I don't know if he understands how much influence his words have in some
hmm
cases, and so he's
Especially negative influence.
yes,
mm,
absolutely. That I
Yes.
don't know if he knows that he could galvanize people like that. Now, the interesting thing now is that he actually takes credit for it, which is also not, in my opinion, it's like, dude, like it's not a feather in your cap, my guy.
yeah,
Uh, but the and I have my theories about why he wanted Carney to win. I think that he he likes the he likes the potential to negotiate against Carney more than he likes the potential to negotiate against Poilievre. I'm almost certain that had to be a motivating factor. Do I live in Trump's head? Of course not.
no.
But if
I think you're giving him too much credit. I don't think he's thought it through. I
I,
mean,
I
because
mean,
Carney announced that their relationship with us, as we once knew it, is over, and he says that they have other options. They can't depend on the U.S. anymore, and so he's trying to take Canada and turn it away from the U.S. So I don't think there's like this big negotiating thing to be had. He's looking as we got to look somewhere else because we can't depend on the U.S. anymore. That's the effect.
just crazy.
My fear is that he's going to turn to China. Where is she going to turn?
Right. That's
You
exactly
know,
what I fear as well. That's
and
exactly right.
when you have people like Trudeau, when they asked him about like which government or style of government he really admired, he said China's, right? And he said, he's not. He said he understands, why. He said, but he's envious of the efficiency in which they can get things done. Yeah, when you have total control and you're
Yeah.
authoritarian, you could just, But he said he admires the efficiency in which they can get things done.
Yeah.
And so
Man.
I
So
think there's this certain, yeah, I think I can see him turning you guys towards China.
let me drop a couple things on y'all. God, I hope. Because somebody could make a call to somebody else and say, "Hey, boy, don't ever let this boy in. Don't ever let him out," and not stuck. Because Devin, you know what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, man. No, I
You know what
feel
I'm
you.
trying
I
to
feel
do.
you.
But I'll drop some objective pieces of information that I'm not going to give my spin. I'm just going to let you know this stuff is there. You can go investigate it. A couple of pieces of information. Um, about 2 years ago, Carney flew to China and so okay. Before Carney ran for the PM, he was the head of Brookfield Asset Management, which is a I don't know if you guys have heard about it. It's a conglomerate. It's got its tentacles in a lot of stuff. Not
It's probably your version of BlackRock.
Yeah, yeah. But here's the
If you're
thing,
familiar with
Brookfield.
BlackRock.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Blackford. Yeah, but
Okay.
Brookfield, funny enough, like they moved out of Canada to the U.S. and Bermuda to avoid taxes, even
Uh,
though, yeah. Anyways, so
Imagine
as
that.
Carney if you paid his Canadian taxes in the last 5 years. We're still waiting for an answer, but that's another conversation.
Oh.
Anyway, but basically, yeah. So Brookfield is not as big as BlackRock, but it's a massive, 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 massive international organization, right? So before coming into office, he was running Brookfield, right? So we know he secured $250 million in funding for Brookfield from the Chinese state bank. So that's one piece of information. So he's in debt to China. His company is in debt to China. That's one piece of information. Another piece of information. So during the prime ministerial campaign, one of his I don't know how it works in the U. I think it's the same thing. Like when you have a president running, you kind of have like governors running in different states, and based on who
Yeah.
wins, that's how many seats. Same thing. We have premiers, we have MPs, right? And so the prime minister is running, but it's really MPs who are fighting for local ridings, right? So one of the
Okay.
It's a little bit different because the
Yeah, it's
governors
a little bit
don't.
different here.
Yeah, governors don't have any bearing on how many representative seats you get. You
yeah,
can have a Democratic governor, and it happens here. People will vote in a Democratic governor, but you actually may wind up getting Republican representatives and Republican senators. So that Democratic governor has no bearing on what happens at the federal level.
got you,
The representatives and the senators do. So
got you.
it can absolutely happen that way. So you can have somebody we have here in Georgia, we have a Republican governor, but because of the candidates that we ran on the Republican Party, we have two Democrat senators in a red state. Uh,
Wow.
but I mean, it was very similar stuff.
Yeah.
People got up in their feels, all that. Because of who was running, and the
Right.
Democratic senators won. And so, even though we have a pretty red state, Republican governor, tons of Republican representatives, two Democrat senators in the upper house. I
Wow.
mean, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, the way it works in Canada is that you have premiers or MPs who are running for several ridings, right? So even the prime minister himself, it's interesting. He's running for the prime minister, but prime ministership, but what he's really running for is saying like, for my riding as the MP, I want to win my seat, but also I want you to go vote for all of the conservative MPs in all of these different regions, and eventually that determines how many seats they get, right?
Yeah.
I say that to say this. During the prime minister campaign, it came out that one of the liberal MPs had made comments suggesting that one of his political opponents, who was a conservative, okay, he was a conservative who was speaking out against China's dictatorship and China's like China's stance against democracy, right? So this Canadian conservative politician, he's a Chinese man, but he's speaking out against China. His liberal opponent makes comments suggesting that people should kidnap this guy, okay, and submit him to the Chinese government who had a bounty on his head. So he says that publicly. One of his
Wow.
Yeah. So during the prime minister campaign, this comes up like, yo, do you know one of your premiers said this? He suggested that a Canadian citizen should be captured and submitted to China for speaking out against them because and claim the bounty basically. This is what happens. Carney comes on and says, "Yeah, well, that was a slip. That was a lapse of judgment. It was definitely a bad thing for him to do, but we don't condone that. But he's an upstanding member of the community, right? We forgive him." Long story short, so he tries to brush over it. The RCMP, which is our version of the FBI, said, "You know, we're actually going to investigate this to see if there's anything." At this point, this minister steps down. So the guy who tried to defend, eventually, who currently tries to defend, steps down. So obviously, they have to replace him with a new candidate, right? They replace him with a new candidate. And this new candidate is in some ways worse than the previous candidate because seriously, because this new candidate is actually tightly integrated with this group that's known to be a talking piece for the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party. Like he is repeating their mantras, repeating their slogans. Anyway, it comes out that Prime Minister Carney. So there's this Canadian organization that has alliances with the CCP. It comes out that Prime Minister Carney had actually gone to some of these events held by this organization and had conversations with them. We don't know about what, but it had conversations with them. Carney is confronted about it. Carney says, "I've never met with them. I don't know who you're talking about. This is not true. It's a lie if you check your sources." And then people show receipts. And the guys are like, "Hey, this is us. It's on our website. We had conversations. It's clear. This is real." Carney commands that the site be taken down. And then, yeah, seriously, he tells them take the site down. So they take the site down. And then this is after he says, "I don't know them." And then everyone is like, "Hey, like guys, this is a photo. These are multiple photos. He said you guys met and you guys talked." He asked the site to get taken down, and then he disappears for 3 days. So again, I'm just dropping pieces of information. Again, I'm not even editorializing here. I'm just letting you know what's happening, right? So
Yeah.
there's the deal with for 250 million for Brookfield that he's gotten from China. There's the connections with members of his party to the CCP. There's the fact that our intelligence community did in fact confirm that there have been incidents of Chinese interfering with our politics with our last two federal elections. That's documented. That's proof. Like we know that to be the case. We know that there were attempts on this election as well, even though they say like, yeah, we can still trust our election process, but we know there were attempts. We know that they were actually running campaigns through WeChat within the Chinese community to prop up Carney, right? So
Yeah.
the Chinese government was trying to, like, we know that this is not a conspiracy. Like, we know this. It's even CBC covered it, right? And the last but not least, the last thing I'll say is this: 2 years, 2 years, and this is what kind of makes it confusing. Like, so what's the game here? Are we aligning with China or are we aligning with the U.S.? I don't really know. 2 years before there's Canadian clippings. 2 years before Carney became the chair of Brookfield Asset Management, 2 years before, and I think he became the chair in like 2020. 2 years before, Brookfield worked with the Trump family on a real estate deal.
Okay.
And the story goes that I think the Brookfield helped the Trump family, shielded them from some SEC investigation. Now, this was before Carney's time, 2 years before Carney's time. So when Carney comes and becomes the chair of Brookfield, would he have known about this? If you're the head of the company, I mean, you may or may
Ain't
not have known.
ain't no
I mean, I
way.
think people would say, like, if you're the head of the company, they probably brief you on all of the exposure that the company has, right? And so when Trump says, "I like the Carney guy,"
Mm.
and Carney's company just happened to help, I think, Trump's son secure a real estate deal and shield them from the SEC about 7 years ago. It raises questions. And then what raises even more questions is when, um, again, remember all of Carney's campaign was Donald Trump is trying to break us. He was very anti-Trump. He was very anti-Trump. That was what his campaign was
Yeah.
built on.
Yeah.
And Poilievre referenced Trump a couple of times, but Trump did not show up nearly as much in Poilievre's campaign as it did in Carney. And as soon as Carney wins, Trump says, "I think the guy who actually hated me less won. I actually think the guy who lost hated me more." It raises the question. I'm like, I don't understand. This guy was literally taking jabs at you like his entire campaign. So if just on the basis of logic, if we're going off what we saw, it would stand to reason that Carney hates you more. But why are you saying he hates you less? I don't know. So there's a big question. There's like we don't exactly know. I don't exactly understand why. And again, to bring it back to the conversation we were having about like what is Trump's goal? Like what was Trump? What was Trump trying to do? The answer is we don't know. We don't know. Was he just like completely aloof and just like Twitter fingers and just being Trump, or did he want Carney in?
Yeah.
Dang.
We don't know, and it's very confusing because it would seem as though Carney does has connections with China, very strong connections with China. Um, but also his company has also worked with Trump in the past before.
Wow.
So who's your
Yeah.
allegiance to? We actually
Yeah.
don't know, and this is
Yeah.
why this is what I'll wrap all this up with. This is why people say Carney. Some people say Carney is much more efficient than Trudeau because he holds a lot of the same ideals that Trudeau has, except Carney was much more powerful, much more connected, and much more efficient at accomplishing said aims. So whereas Trudeau didn't really have a lot of political or economic might, Carney does.
Wow.
Carney does. I think Carney is a master chess player. I think that's what we're seeing. Like he's in the private world, he's done some incredible things, and now he's coming to the public world, and he managed to win the prime minister election. I'm like, bro, like if nothing else, this guy's a master chess player. So was Trump just being aloof? Some would say yes, others would say no.
Wow.
Yeah.
But they they're not new to each other's orbit. They're not,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they both know it.
No.
So whatever is really going on will be made manifest in time. I probably said a lot more than I should say.
I mean,
God,
well,
but it's all there.
you
It's all out there.
you helped our content. That's for sure. I don't know if anybody expected to get educated at that level. That is revelatory for
Yeah,
sure.
it's all there.
And I mean, if we're gonna, um, I would say, yeah, if you're interested, definitely go and do your digging, because that is not that's not nothing.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
clearly not nothing.
It's not
Um,
nothing. But again, it's the kind of thing where you wouldn't know if you don't look for it. You wouldn't know if, like, if a guy shows up on the scene and says, "Hey, I want to be your new prime minister." I mean,
yeah,
you should investigate the guy.
yeah,
So Paul Revere, for all people may like criticize him and say like, "Hey, you're a career politician. You're part of the establishment." I'm like, yeah, but the guy's been saying the same thing for 10 years. He's been saying, guys, we shouldn't print money. It's going to cause inflation. He's been saying, guys, we need to cut taxes. He's been saying, guys, we need to build more houses. He's saying, guys, we need to unleash our resource sector. He's been saying the same thing. The man has not budged. He hasn't changed his stance. Whether you agree with it or not, you can't say he's not consistent, right?
yeah,
True.
And a new guy
True.
comes in, and you don't really know who he is. But you just say, like, yes, he's a fresh face and he has a lot of experience because Carney has a lot of big fancy titles. He was governor of the Bank of England. He was governor of the Bank of Canada during the financial crisis, the '08 financial crisis. He was a UN special envoy for climate change. And so just at surface level, and now he's running for the prime ministership, and he was educated in Harvard. Was it Harvard or Oxford? So like just looking at his resume, like, boy, this boy has got some big titles and he's worked in some big places. All you have
But
to
it,
do, no, like, and he's also like, he
yeah.
was also the economic advisor. So just on paper, I saw this meme where it was Paul Revere. Paul Revere is just like career politician, and then under Carney, all of these accreditations, school, and all you have to, and so I think, and so that packaging was enough to say, hey, look, Bank of England trusted him, right? Even though the housing crisis exploded under his tenure as the Bank of England. But we're not going to talk about that. Like, all you had to do was just say, okay, like, yeah, he has these fancy titles, but what did he actually do? Like, forget the titles. What were the effects of the things
Okay.
he did? And once you
It's
asked
making.
that question and you started investigating, sorry, let me just wrap up with this. You would start
Okay.
finding out. And this is why, and again, this is not a conspiracy theory because this was even reported on CBC. This is why he called for the shortest possible election. Because the
Yeah, that's
truth
what I
is,
was going to get
the
to.
more you get to know him, the more you begin to realize I'm not sure I like this guy. And so what we saw was that the longer the election dragged out, the higher his disapproval rating started increasing because people started learning more and more about him. They saw him in the debate. They saw him do the word salad, duck and evade. Some of these things started coming out, but that's why he called to capitalize on the momentum and to get into office as quickly as possible. And now that he's there, I think people are going to reap the fruits. They're going to discover who they really voted for.
Wow.
Man,
So,
that's crazy. And that's what I was going to point to because I didn't realize how unknown he was. And then he gets this seat appointed, however you want to say it. And then there's an election on it in 6 weeks. You got to vote him in as prime minister in 6 weeks. You
6
don't know
weeks.
anything about him.
Yeah, it's
You got to
crazy,
That's
vote
man.
him in 6
crazy.
weeks. Why you control the main media? Why you control the media? So,
Yeah,
meaning that if
That's
you really want to know who he is, you actually have to go do your homework. You have to go investigate. You have to go read
yeah.
articles, and you have to go watch YouTube videos from both the right and the left to actually see, like, okay, it's like, what did he do? Who is this guy? Before I just say, yeah, I want you to come and run my country. Not to mention the fact that what was in fact known about him was that he was the economic advisor to Trudeau for 5 years. Like, he advised him on economic policy. He said printing money would not cause inflation. It would
oh,
cause inflation.
that is that's the number one cause of inflation.
That,
That's
but
everybody knows that.
a lot of people don't believe. A lot of people don't believe that. You know, it's crazy when I talk to people. You got a lot of people who don't know that. And it goes to show. You know, one of the things that Kev and I say all the time is that most people do not have a political philosophy. Most people do not spend very much time at all paying attention to any of this stuff. And that's how you wind up having people who shouldn't be let, within a mile of a political seat, wind up actually holding the political seat. Because most people, one, they don't have a political philosophy and they don't know anything about the people who are actually taking the seat. They don't really know much. They know what's been put in front of them. And it's hard. I'm not going to front, man. If you're not interested in politics, if you're not interested in this stuff, it's not easy to go and find the truth. It's actually pretty hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people who want to get into position, they're interested parties who front the money for the campaigns, etc. It is very, very interesting to watch how this stuff happens, but it's just a warning.
Yeah.
It's a warning to folks. Do your homework.
Homework.
Yeah. So
It's interesting. I sorry, I know I'm gonna jump off here in a second. It's interesting because again, during the campaign, I had some liberal canvassers come to my neighborhood and knock on my door. And I thought to myself, oh, you don't, I don't think this is the door you wanted to knock at. And I wasn't even antagonistic. I promise you. I just asked them very simple questions. I'm like, okay, just help me understand, like what is it about him that you enjoy? Like, what do you think would make him? And of course, they said all of the talking points, like he worked for this thing and he worked for this thing and he worked for this thing. I said, okay, cool. I said, makes sense. Very flashy. What did he do in those positions? Have you investigated? Like, what did he actually do? And they couldn't answer.
of course not.
They couldn't. I
Of
said,
course
what if
not.
I told you that this happened during his tenure at the Bank of England and the former prime minister said this about his performance? Oh, he did? It's like, it's right. Just go. I said, guys, at the end of the day, I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. I just said, just go beyond the talking points.
Yeah.
Just go and actually ask the questions. Thank you guys for stopping by. Right.
Dude.
And it's, it's, you're right. I wasn't always this politically aware, Devin. I wasn't this politically aware until the pandemic.
Mm.
And then at the pandemic, I was like, oh snap. But when they say he who controls the medium controls the message, and I was like, wait. Just on a gut level, some of this stuff doesn't feel right to me. It just doesn't feel right that for a country that espouses the rights of the individual to bodily autonomy, all of a sudden people are going to be fired for their livelihood is going to be removed because they're concerned, they have legitimate questions about this thing. And our so-called prime minister, who's supposed to be the one who brings everybody together, begins to publicly malign people, call them lunatics, call them free, call them a fringe group who have legitimate questions. And that was the first time I really started to question legacy media. I was like, this just, and then I started getting more involved and and that's where you start learning the truth of a lot of what's going on. You know what I'm saying? But admittedly, I wasn't always this aware. And so I try to be compassionate to people who are just not as informed because I used to be like that, right? And sometimes I want to say like, my God, bro, like this isn't politics is not just this outside thing. Like it actually affects your life. It affects you in a material way. Like at the end of the day, when you work the job and you look at your paycheck and you're like, yo, this paycheck doesn't match with the effort that I put in. That's not some outside. Those are your politicians that are enacting policies that affect the companies that hire you, and companies are having to make decisions based on the environment in which they live. And that has
Yeah.
an impact on how much you make, on how much your rent is, on how much your water is, and how safe your communities are. You get what I'm saying? And so I'm like,
Yeah.
I try to be compassionate because I wasn't always this aware, this engaged. And I remember like, okay, I used to be in that position. So I can't just like come at them sideways and be like, are you stupid? This is, no, I can't do that. But at the same time, I have to encourage people not to be apathetic. Like not to just be like, yeah, well, I don't like it. So, yeah, but what are you gonna do? You can't do it. I'm like, no, what are you gonna do is you're gonna get informed. You're gonna get informed.
Oh, there it is. He said you're going to
Mm.
get informed. There it
And
is
have
right
a
there.
take.
That's
On that
right.
note,
He
informed
said
takes
it,
with
man.
Devin and Kevin.
That's what it's about. Stay informed, man. Man, where can people find you online if they want to find you?
At all of Chope. So ALLOFSHOPE. If you put that at all of Chope, you find me on Instagram. If you put allofchope.com, I'll pop up, and then that can link you to all of my different YouTube, at all of Chope on YouTube, on Instagram.com, and you'll find me.
Awesome, man. Awesome.
Yeah.
Man,
Awesome.
Chopay, thank you so much for coming here and dropping all this knowledge on us. I mean, this is very instructive, and I hope that people also reflect on what that means for us down here in
Yeah.
the States and all of that. So, man, please tell the family that we said hey, and
Will do.
man,
Thank you.
we gotta have you back, man. Great to have you
Thank you.
on.
Be praying for us. Be praying for me. Um, yeah, be praying that the Lord's will be done in Canada and the Lord's will be done in our lives. And this has been a service to everybody, and now my family included.
Man, awesome, man. Well,
All right, man. I
brother,
Appreciate you
appreciate
guys.
you.
yeah,
All right,
man.
man. What's up?
Have
Peace.
a good
All right.
night.
Have a good one.
Man, well, now
That
I
was
feel like I got a PhD in Canadian politics.
for real. And I'm like, oh my goodness, we need to go save Canada.
I'm saying we either need to go save Canada or we need to at least save Chopin.
Oh
we got to go up there and
man,
run a special ops mission and get him up out of there, man.
for real. That's dude, state controlled media?
Yeah, yeah.
That's crazy.
I didn't. I mean, I remember he said that. Like he explained it to me, and I did not realize. I knew that it was bad because I had seen some headlines flying around, and I've seen people talking about it on X. about just how much of Canadian media is actually controlled by the state. But I did not know that they had gone so far as to start actually shutting down access to certain people online because they said things that people don't. They've said things that they don't agree with. I didn't think that they had gone quite that far. I don't know why I shouldn't be surprised. I mean, they were willing to arrest people, shut their bank accounts down. They're willing to do a lot. I mean, we look at this and you look at the context of the world, right? Look at what's happening in the UK. You literally have people getting arrested for making social media posts, and they are thank God they're actually recording with their phones the police coming to their house and saying, yes, you are being arrested for something that you posted on Facebook. So I shouldn't be surprised, but I think anybody who loves freedom, who loves individual liberty and understands the importance of that should be very irked that is happening literally right across the border to the north.
Because you realize that what we consider liberty and freedom is really a U.S. thing. I thought it was a Western thing. I thought Europe was like-minded. I thought Canada was like-minded. And we realized, no, they've got way more government authority over people's lives than what I thought was possible in the West.
I had no idea. I had no idea that it was that we were that alone in that regard. And when I found out that, because I'm like you, man. I thought Europe had freedom of speech. I thought UK had freedom of speech. But when you hear some of these folks who immigrate here and are super passionate about America and America continuing to be a freedom-loving nation, and they say, you guys don't get it. You're the last hope. You're the last bastion of freedom in the world. There is no other country that is as free as America. If you fall, that's it. There's nowhere else. I thought they were being hyperbolic. I didn't realize they were speaking from experience. I thought like, okay, you came from one country, the whole world can't be like that. But I think we are the only country in the world where speech, our freedom of speech, is protected by our laws. It's the only. So far as I know, there is no other country in the world who has freedom of speech.
They don't. I thought they did, and they clearly don't. But that was good, man. That was good. Good call on you, man. Bring him on. It was good. I mean, he wasn't just knowledgeable, just the way he presented everything was easy to understand, and I got it. He painted the picture, and I got it. And so, from the comments, I can tell that the audience did as well. So
absolutely,
good call, man.
Yeah, man. So what's next?
I'll be honest, I did not expect that to take that long.
I didn't either. I know we talked about covering Trump's first 100 days, and we don't have a lot of time to do that, actually. Maybe I might have to go and change the thumbnail in the description, which we can do. Thank God. The cool thing about this is that new media, I can go do that, and it's no problem. But I know we had a couple of things that you had in the rundown that I thought might be interesting to get to if you wanted to hit into that stuff.
Yeah, whatever you want to bring up.
So I definitely think, let me see here. We're going to skip right on past a few things.
Are you going straight to what an X?
What the X, man. Straight to what the X. Let's go. So Twitter's been, or X, excuse me, my bad. X has been active lately. It's been going off.
The platform formerly known as Twitter.
Yes. Oh man, yeah. You got to talk about this one, man. Who saw this coming right here?
Oh my goodness! Like, what universe are we living in? All right, so you got Chink. He says, obviously I disagree with most things with MTG, Marjorie Taylor Greene. If you don't know who she is, she's the representative out of Georgia.
I'm
Full
sorry, America.
MAGA.
I'm sorry.
Yep. Full MAGA. Says some crazy stuff. She's basically the Republican version of Jasmine Crockett. That's who she is.
Yes.
And so he says, obviously, I disagree with most of what MTG has to say, but left wing and right wing populists should unite on one thing: no more wars, and definitely no war with Iran. It's not our business. Let Israel and Saudi Arabia deal with it. Why do we have to fight their wars for them? And then Marjorie Taylor Greene commented, I'm glad we are able to find common ground. And then Sean King comes in and says, I can also agree with this. And I'm like, what is going on?
Oh my gosh.
So you got Chinks is the founder and leader of Young Turks, progressive, left, Marjorie Taylor Greene, hardcore MAGA right, and then Sean King is like the fake BLM wannabe dude. Like,
oh my gosh. Oh, I have let me just not use any of the nicknames I have for him.
Like, who saw these three unite? I mean, I always wanted America to unite politically like this, but not like this.
No,
this isn't what I was thinking.
Yeah, I'm sorry. This right here is like whatever this is, I'm not with it. Whatever this. Now, I understand the sentiment. I'm not going to say that I don't understand the sentiment of why do we have to be involved in everything. I understand why people feel that way. I don't think that we have to be involved in absolutely everything. But when I read Chank's comments, I'm just like, man, those are the comments of a person who does not understand the American interest in maintaining
Hegemony?
Say what?
I said hegemony, like world power influence. Like, people, this is the thing. They think they can enjoy the power and the benefits of America being the leader in the world, and the pretty much the only superpower. We can say China, but for a long time it was just the United States, right? And they have benefited from this. They don't understand it. Like, America's strength comes from its wealth and its military, and they are beneficiaries of this. And yet they think they can maintain the same benefits and pleasure, but removing the American influence from the world stage. It's like that you can't do that, because someone else is going to fill that vacuum and they're going to have that influence, and we're going to have less influence, and it's going to impact us globally. It's going to affect us economically. So I commented on this, and James Lindsay actually liked my comment, because all I said was these people are idiots. And I said, this is not how you determine foreign policy. It just isn't. Like, that's just stupid to just say no more wars, especially with Iran. Like, that's not how you develop a foreign policy position on any issue.
Thank you.
It just isn't.
Thank you.
I mean, just three idiots agreeing on stupidity.
And that's my issue is like, okay, guys, I hear people on not wanting us to be the world's police. I understand that. I understand it, and I'm not advocating for us to have our hands wrist deep in elbows deep in everything. Okay, I get it. However, I do think that we can tend to have, like you said, man, I mean, we can tend to have this naive view. I mean, again, I don't mean to insult
They don't understand how the world works.
Right. And that's, I think that's the thing that I want people to come away with is yes, we can try to decide that we're just going to mind our own business and be more isolated in how we handle these things, and decide, okay, we're not gonna get involved in some of these things abroad. What that's going to do is that a lot of the things that you think aren't going to affect you are going to affect you, right? So, the stuff happening in the Suez Canal, you think that, I mean, that stuff affects your ability to get certain goods from overseas. That affects our companies being able to sell goods overseas. If the Suez Canal, if we can't traverse the Suez Canal, we have to go all the way around Africa in order to get some things to some people. Do you understand that we have to care what happens over there because it affects your daily life, whether you realize it or not?
Yeah.
You have to care what's happening north of the border, because if Canada winds up cozying up to China, then that means that you have Chinese influence, Chinese communist influence directly above the border. Do you think that they're going to hesitate for a second to try to use that influence to affect their power over America? I'm not acting like everything has to be a chess game and we have to scheme and manipulate. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying, though, is that we can't put on blinders or put on our headphones and act like there isn't stuff going on and think that we're going to be able to have happy little lives over here and it's not going to eventually reach us.
Yeah. And I'll add another layer to that, because you mentioned Canada and our relationship with them. From a defense standpoint, Canada is our first line of defense against Russia. People realize Alaska and Russia almost touch. So when you got to come over the caps, you're going to get to Canada before the U.S. If they launch nuclear weapons, they're going to come over Canada before they come to the U.S. Canada is our first line of defense. And we have defense agreements. We train together. We work together. I've worked with a lot of Canadians when I was in that arena. We share information with each other. We have a close working relationship because of that defense pact we have with each other. Well, if Canada pivots away and turns towards China, let's say Canada goes the way of BRICS, right? And they are now partnered with Russia and China economically. Defense-wise, that relationship that they have with us might not exist anymore, right? And so there are real effects to all of these things that happen around the world. Also, when it comes to U.S. military power, people don't realize that the U.S. actually prevents wars from happening because of the risk of us getting involved, right? If you pull that off the table and they know the U.S. is not going to get involved, it's kind of like when the adult's not in the room and the kids act up. That's basically what you have. Like, nations would start to get more aggressive with one another because there's nobody to come in and slap them upside the head, right? And the last thing I'll say about this, a war with Iran will last 2 or 3 weeks. That's it. We're not talking about regime change like we did in Iraq, because that's what took so long. Trying to build the country back up, establish a new government, all of that stuff. The actual military war part of us going into Iraq was about 3 weeks. And it'll be about the same with Iran. About 3 weeks, we could take them out militarily. This whole idea that, well, we don't want to go with the war with Iran, it's like, you're just not informed. People, there's gonna be World War III. Like, no, it's not. Like, Iran fired 300 and some missiles and drones at Israel, and like one missile came through and killed someone in Gaza or in the West Bank. Like, it's not a fair fight. It's not. They're not military on the same level. And so, yeah, this idea, like this fear, we can't get into any more wars. Look, Do we need to rethink how we did Iraq and Afghanistan in terms of regime change? We're going to come in, take out this country, take out their government, prop up a new government, nation build. Yeah, we probably shouldn't do that anymore. But can you go in and take somebody out militarily and bring them to the table of negotiating and prevent them from doing whatever bad thing they were doing? Absolutely, you can.
100%.
Basically the first Iraq war, where we didn't take Saddam out of power. We just completely decimated his military to where he wasn't a threat anymore, you know? And so, and the first Gulf War, I think was about 6 weeks, 6 weeks of military actual campaign, and they were done. And so, yeah, it's not what people think it is. And so, yeah, that coalition, but it's one of those things of left wing, right wing populists, man. We're talking about these populist movements. They're not always the best thing, because a lot of times the principles they're rooted in just aren't the right things, in which are like the best for the nation, but it's a populist movement, and so people cater to it to get power.
Yes.
But at what cost?
At what cost? That's exactly right. And that's my big concern. That's my big concern with the populist movement right now. It is this move towards populism that is going to cause people to start to think more, actually, like closer to a the kinds of thinking that can get a despot into power, because populism just goes off of what everybody's feeling. It doesn't operate off of core principle.
Did you see that R.C. Sproul sermon? It was a lecture on pragmatism.
I haven't seen
that
the
I
whole thing. I
posted.
saw you posted it, and it's interesting because I have I bet you I know what he's going to say, and I have the same opinion. Pragmatism is eventually going to lead you down a road that you don't want to go down, because what works isn't always what's right.
Yep. Pragmatism, he made 2 points. Pragmatism focuses on what works versus what's right. And so it's not concerned with what is right. It's simply concerned with what works. But what that does is it takes short-term fixes and ignores the long-term consequences. The best thing I can think of is the war on poverty, right? It was a quick fix that seemed to be a solution to a problem that the government could do. But yet, when you ignore truth, when you ignore the truth of human nature, right, you ignore the consequences that have come off of that. And now you got all these consequences from that action, but now you have to do new policies to handle the consequences, right? And so essentially pragmatism just continues to grow itself, because it's just about these temporary fixes, and no one's thinking bigger or long term or looking at what is right. They're just simply trying to figure out what works to solve this particular problem, and it's just very short-sighted. And I think that's what these populist movements are, right? We get it. They're upset about Afghanistan and Iraq, and so the short-term fix is no more wars. Well, what are the long-term effects of that policy? And it's just there are no adults in the room. It's just children. Children react off their feelings, right? It's adults who are supposed to show wisdom and discernment and think past their feelings, and I just feel like we have a bunch of children who are just operating off of emotions, and this is how we get stuff like this.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that those people's opinions would change a lot if they had more information. I think a lot of them. Some of them, I don't think that they are honest brokers. They know what happens if we decide to be isolationist. I think they know, and they want that stuff to happen.
The rise of China.
Right. That's right. I mean, that's absolutely right. And but if you were getting some of the briefings, if you were getting some of that stuff, and you actually knew what is out there, how messed up the world really is, you would realize that if you just put up the walls and try to, be insular, you're going to wind up with the enemy at the walls. Right now,
Yeah.
I'm not saying everything's perfect. I'm not saying that we don't get involved in things that we probably shouldn't get involved in. However, I am saying that right now, the goal is to keep that stuff as far away from us as possible. That's what the actual goal of some of this stuff is to make sure that it doesn't get on American shores. And if we decide that we're not going to prevent war, because if you want the whole no more wars thing, there's no such thing as no more wars this side of heaven. I'm gonna go ahead and let you know that right now.
Yeah,
There's no such thing as that.
It's like saying we're going to eradicate poverty.
You're not.
You can't.
Yeah, like just hate to break it to you, you're not. You're not going to eradicate poverty, and you're not going to eradicate violence. You're not going to eradicate war from the earth. Okay, but you can try to make sure you're prepared to defend yourself, and you can mitigate war starting. We can have debates about the best ways for that to happen. However, if you decide that you're going to be insular and just deal with things once they get to our shores, or our very, very close neighbors' shores, if you decide to do that, they will come to our shores, because that is exactly what they want. They want us to not be involved elsewhere because, think about it. If China decided to roll through Asia, who could stop them? India put up a pretty good fight. India will put up a pretty good fight, but Japan's not going to stop them. Taiwan's certainly not going to stop them. The Pacific Islands ain't going to stop them.
No, it's only us.
Right.
It's only us. And so that's just what people just tend to they just don't understand. They don't understand that was the whole point of 9/11. The whole point of 9/11 and the reason they hit the World Trade Center was to cripple us economically so that we could no longer project force away from home base.
Yep.
Right? We could no longer influence things around the world. They didn't like the fact that we influenced things within the Middle East, or that we backed certain governments like Saudi Arabia that they thought were infidels. Right? So their whole point was to make it to where we could not intervene in the rest of the world. And so in that regard, this whole isolationist mindset, Al-Qaeda is like, yay, they're cheering because this is what they've wanted. That was the whole point of them taking down the trade towers. It's just people just don't understand. They just don't understand, and they're reactionary off their emotions. And so I hope people become more informed on these things before and really think through them before they make these decisions. Or just blanket positions of, and this is what happened to Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson. I know I've talked about it before, but once you have this mindset of no more wars, that's your position. Then you start to reframe everything that's happening in a way that justifies you not getting involved in it. Right? That's what they did with Israel and Hamas. Instead of just talking about the horrors of October 7 and realizing what was happening, because they didn't want us involved, they tried to talk it down. They started trying to say, well, Israel is, but the whole point was, let's convince the U.S. people not to get involved. That was the whole point. It wasn't about examining it from a truthful standpoint. Once again, what works more than what's true, right? And that's what gets under my skin because I care about what's true.
Right.
And when I hear people just basically intentionally misleading people from what is true simply because they have an agenda, I don't care how well-intentioned that agenda is, such as us not being involved in wars, you're still lying. You're still misrepresenting what the truth is. And so that's what bothers me. But that's what we're seeing happening.
Yeah. Yeah. So I again, in the spirit of our show, that is that is what we want for people to do. Is, we're not trying to tell you that you got to land where we land on everything, but we want you to form your opinion off of real stuff, as opposed to just having an emotional reaction to something, or thinking when you see that we're involved with certain things. I agree. A lot of things Doge was cutting, they needed to cut. I mean, my goodness. Yes, like we should not be sending dollars overseas for a lot of these things. So please don't get me wrong here. However, don't just say, "Oh, well, we're sending all this money overseas and our people are starving." It's like, okay, first of all, we're not starving.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever lived in another country. Go live in another country for a while. We're not starving. Our poor people are doing pretty dang good compared to a lot of poor people elsewhere in the country. I'm not trying to say it's not bad. I don't want to wind up on the street either, right?
But you're saying it's relative.
It's relative, right? And so our poor people are doing well compared to poor people in other countries, especially third world countries. When poor people have cell phones, poor people got smartphones. Okay, like I'm just saying. Now, yes, do I think that we need to spend our money better? Yes, but again, it's a populist attitude to say, "Oh, well, all that money's going overseas. Why don't we spend that money on our own people?" It's like, okay, if the money is being spent to protect the country, cool. If you're talking about us just basically turning, socialism light or straight socialism, because in my opinion, a lot of populists do not think through the positions that they take. I'm not with that. That's not, we don't want that. It's not to say we don't want people to be taken care of. There's, in our Facebook group, we got in a discussion about that this week, about whether Republicans and Democrats, whether or not Republicans even care about people and all that. And it's not that we don't want people to be taken care of. We just don't think that's the government's job. Man, real quick, Claire had a great question.
That's what I was waiting for you to break. Yeah, to put that up on the screen. Yeah. So Claire says, what are the questions you ask when it comes to analyzing foreign policy decision? That is a really good question. I think the first thing is it in U.S. interest? Is it involving a key ally of ours? Does it affect us in terms of, like, I guess, like, what is the bigger picture? In terms of, for instance, I'll just say this: Iran getting nuclear weapons. If we just said, you know what, that's not something we should care about. Look, I know this your boy, but I gotta say it. This is why I decided years ago I could not vote for Ron Paul when he was running for office. He said, "What's the big deal if Iran get nuclear weapons? We've got them." Right.
Woo, I didn't know
I was
he
like,
said that.
whoa.
Oh, man.
I was like, whoa, bro. I mean, this is I was on active duty, and I'm like, bro, you have no idea what you're talking about. You cannot be president.
Yeah.
I don't care how much I like your economic policies or whatever. Like, no, that's just a naive view of the world. And I say that to say this, like, you have to look at these issues. Like, for instance, if Iran gets nuclear weapons, and you understand the Shia-Sunni conflict, what you're going to have is a nuclear arms race of Sunni nations. And now you got this volatile Middle Eastern relationship between Shias and Sunnis now are nuclear armed. I think that is in the U.S. interest for that not to happen. Yeah. And so, yeah, we should be involved with this Iran thing, even if it means us going to war to prevent them from doing that, because of the repercussions of what that could have down the line. That's not just an Israel thing, as someone in the chat has tried to say. No,
right.
That's way beyond Israel. Israel will be their first target, but it goes way beyond Israel.
Remember the Twin Towers. That's all I got to say about that.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to remember, Israel is the little Satan. America is the big Satan. That's how they refer to us. And And so, yeah, just asking those questions of, okay, what are the repercussions? Listen to the arguments on both sides and determine, is this something that is really in our wheelhouse? Is this something we need to care about? A lot of times there are things that happen, I'm just going to say, on the continent of Africa that we don't really care about because it has no bearing on us, no whatsoever. And people are like, man, this horrible thing is happening in Sudan, yet you don't hear about it in the news, or why in the US doing anything. It's because it just doesn't affect us at all, or it doesn't affect any of our close allies, but when it's Ukraine and Russia, and we've got our NATO allies right there, or when it's Iran is affecting our allies of Israel and Saudi Arabia, that, or is affecting, or you got the Houthis, like you just talking about, that have closed off the Suez Canal by attacking ships. And now we're talking about, disrupting international trade, or you've got China building these islands in the South China Sea so that they can now control the South China Sea and control what goes in and out, like, or like how they control the Panama Canal. Like, these are things that affect us. They're around the world. They're not here at home, but yet they affect us. And so it's really about being educated on the issue. And it doesn't mean that, oh no, we got to go to war tomorrow, but we just need to understand what the situation is to have an informed opinion on it, to know whether it's something that could have long-term detrimental effects to us or to our interest. I tell people all the time, one of the parts of national security is economic security. And as long as we're in a global economy, what happens around the world that affects us economically is a part of our national defense. And so we just have to look at things, understand how world global economic systems work, understand how treaties work with our allies. Like, that's why Ukraine is in the situation they're in. I say we didn't have a treaty. We kind of did, and we kind of owe them. That's a whole nother story. But there are just certain countries that we don't have that relationship or responsibility to, because the whole point is we help them, and in turn they help us. So when we're in Iraq, when we're in Afghanistan, it wasn't just U.S. forces. Our NATO allies were there with us, and so it's just more so of understanding how all of us work together because we have common interests and common goals. And so just kind of understanding the landscape of geopolitics and how countries relate to one another, and treaties and effects of certain actions, international trade, just understanding all of those things and just having an open mind and an understanding of what the issues are, and not coming in with a set position to then either prop up or tear down. And I feel like that's what we're seeing a lot of, is people are coming with pre-positioned positions, and they're coming to the issue to either, prop that issue up even more, or to tear it down as not an issue, because they have certain biases that they're operating from. Instead of saying, let me examine this situation. Now, based on what I've examined, okay, how do I feel is the best course of action, or should this involve us? And just approach it that way, and don't come from it from a pro-war, anti-war. Like,
Right.
it just shouldn't be that,
It's too simplistic. Too simplistic.
Yeah, it's too simplistic. These are complicated things,
Yeah. And now the first principles we operate from, Claire saying,
no, you don't have to go back to school. You just gotta be informed. Like we said, just be informed.
Yeah. And again, that's one of the reasons why we do this show, is because we want to be able to help people be informed.
Yeah. And this is what I'll say too. Not to cut you up, but I'll say this too. Be slow to form an opinion a lot of times, because it's so much pressure to come out there and have a hot take and just start, holding a position. Sometimes it's good to just sit there and examine and do your homework before, determining where you land on something. So
Yeah, no, that's really good. That's actually something that, for being a co-host on this show, I should be a lot better about this. But I realized that there are several things that I'd form an opinion on like that, and just always thinking you have to have an answer right then, and you don't always have to have an answer right then. And I've been enjoying waiting to form an opinion on certain things, because it's not it's not always as cut and dry as you think it is with the information that you get at first, and a little more information comes out, etc., and then you realize, okay. I mean, with the Ukraine thing as an example, I didn't know that we had treaties with Ukraine, that we basically agreed that, like, if the stuff pops off, we have to step in, because they gave up their nuclear weapons. We got them to give up nuclear weapons in exchange for, hey, if the stuff pops off, we're going to give them up because you guys wanted us to, but that means you got to step in if Russia tries to get froggy. And so we actually do owe them, because we talked them out of their ability to defend themselves against a nuclear power. We owe them.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Most people in the American public don't know that, and that's the problem. And so, because I mean, I haven't seen a politician talk about it.
Oh no, it's not popular to talk about that. Mm-mm.
But you would think that even the Democrats who are like, we got to step in and save Ukraine, you would think they would be on TV talking about, hey, this is what we signed with them. They agreed to give up nuclear weapons in exchange for our protection. And here it is. And now we're reneging on our word. We shouldn't do that. Like, you would think that even the Democrats who are pro-Ukraine would be out there making that argument, but it just goes to show that, like, even they don't even care about, like, making good arguments. It's just
pro-Ukraine is a vibe.
We got to defend democracy.
That's right. Pro-Ukraine, it ain't nothing but vibes. On the left, pro-Ukraine ain't nothing but vibes. What I found is that people on the right, it's a virtue signal, 100%. People on the right who are pro defending Ukraine, what I found is they actually have a little bit more information about what our actual obligations are. They tend to have more understanding of that. And at first, I'll be honest with you, man, there's some folks who were talking that stuff where I'm just like, man, y'all don't know what time it is, man. We can't be out here, spending all this money all the time. And I'm not anti-defending Ukraine. I'm just anti-blank check. I am anti-blank check. I'm still anti-blank check. But if I had known that, it's like, guys, we signed a contract. We got to we had somebody to give up the guns.
And this is the problem. The reason it's blank check, because we won't just actually get involved. Right. And so we're trying to play this proxy war where we're just going to fund them. That's what, and so that's the issue, we were going to talk about, grading Trump. To me, that's one of my issues with Trump on Ukraine is he took military action off the table before he even had a negotiation.
Dude. Like, yeah. Oh, so well.
You can't have peace through strength when you just took strength off the table.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, and so that's why this thing, and once again, I'll just go back to it. The reason this thing has drug on and the reason this thing is even a thing is because of our unwillingness to get involved. If Russia had a thought that invading Ukraine would bring U.S. military action upon them, they would not have done it. That's all I got to say.
This whole you can't say, oh, if I was president, this would have never happened. Okay, you can't say if I was president, this would have never happened. When you acting like you ain't willing to swing, if we had taken the position of, hey, we signed an agreement, we don't want something to pop off, but if you decide to do something stupid, we come and we made an agreement and we are going to get involved. If we're sitting over there saying like, go ahead, swing, man, go ahead and swing. If we're saying that, then I think the war doesn't happen. But I think that if we're going to take this position, you're absolutely right. If you're going to take this position of, well, we just want the war to stop. It's like, well, Putin's like, Putin's like, I don't want the war to stop. If you're not going to do anything, I'm not going to stop. I mean, if you're not going to get involved, why would I stop?
Exactly. I'm winning. And it's crazy, man. The Russians fight the craziest wars, man. I've never seen a nation that just believes in the war of attrition.
Yeah.
I have more men to die than you have.
Yeah.
And I'm cool with that.
I've heard that China has, as much as they're not as ready to get into a kinetic war. I think they're a lot more calculating, but they also kind of have the same ideas, just like, we got way more bodies to throw at this problem than you.
It's tied to their communist kind of background. I mean, where the people are just ants. They're just worker bees. They're expendable.
Yeah.
Right. And I have more ants than you have. And so if I lose ants, what's the big deal?
Yeah.
I have more than you. Like, it doesn't value the individual life. Like, U.S. soldiers, when they die, come home in caskets draped in flags. Like, it is a big deal because we lost someone. They don't have that respect for life. There's respect for the individual, the understanding the stories of the families, and the seeing the widow draped over the casket. Like, those are things that hit home for us, right?
Yes.
They don't care.
Yeah.
They don't care at all.
Yeah. That right there, man, is a great point, because you have to remember that that's what's out there. People have to, when people get on this populist thing and this isolationist thing, you have to remember that that's what's out there.
Yeah.
Evil is real. And if your strategy to keep evil at bay is to just hole up, I'm
say
sorry,
not my
man.
problem. That it's just to say not my problem. That's their strategy. And it's like, you have no idea what the world, people think is. I used to say this about the progressive left. I used to say they believe that the United States is a cause, and now it's on the right. Now the woke right believes the same thing.
Yeah.
The United States is responsible for all evil and wrong in the world.
Right.
And if it wasn't for us, the world would be made of sugar and spice and everything nice. And everyone would just get along if it wasn't for us messing with things in the military industrial complex, or however they want to spin it. Now the woke right has that belief. And it's like, no. I mean, they even blame us for Putin invading Ukraine. It's always us. We're the problem.
Yeah.
No other, it's like there's no other bad actors out there. It's just all the United States. And that's just a very, very misguided ideology. I'm gonna call it an ideology.
Yeah, I agree with that. We had a couple more things on What the X before we wrap here.
Let's do it.
Man, this junk is wild, man. This junk is wild. Let me see if I got this up here. This is happening. I think this up in
Shiloh Hendricks did nothing wrong. 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 Shiloh Hendricks.
Yeah, that's wild. Is that up in Toronto?
Yeah, that's in Toronto. So Billboard
that's
Chris,
where Chopay lives. That's where Chopay lives.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That and I agree with Billboard Chris. I can't read it, but he called this an op. He's like,
yeah,
the political right does not dress like Antifa and do chants like this. No. This is not. So this is what people don't understand. There are actors out there who are trying to get us in a race war, and they are antagonizing both sides of the thing, and people are buying it. I do not believe those are legitimate right-wing conservative people.
No,
absolutely not. That's an op. Because no one acts like that. No one does that. Not, especially not over this Shiloh Hendricks thing. So if you guys don't know who Shiloh Hendricks is, she's a white woman Where was it? Where did it happen?
I'm not sure actually. I'll have to look it up.
I can't remember where it happened, but she was in a park, and apparently a black kid. She's a white woman. Apparently, a black kid was going through her purse or her bag. Turns out the kid has autism, and she called the kid the N-word. And so this other guy's there, and he's filming it. He's like, "Did you just call him the N-word?" And she doubles down on it, right? And she's just going off, and she's holding her kid, and she is just like unapologetically being racist. And there has been this movement online to kind of put her in a light as a symbol of freedom and a symbol of resistance against all of the white shaming, and we're not going to take it anymore. Yeah, I saw one AI image of her as Joan of Arc. That's how and it's so much propaganda behind this. Her GoFundMe or Go Send Go campaign has over $500,000 in it that they've raised for her. Because this is the thing, she did get doxxed. So they doxxed her house.
Cool.
It's not cool. And so she said she needed money to relocate. And so she's raised over $500,000. But there has been no remorse for her actions. And it's just been a swell of support for her. And it's like, what are we talking about? This woman called this kid, this young, I think he's 5 years old, something like that, autistic boy, the N-word, because he was going through her bag. Like, yeah, and she's turned into the poster child of we're not going to take it anymore.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say, these cats, that can't, I mean, now, all right, I will say, if this is up in Toronto, and I think I see the Canadian flags up there, yep. If this is in Toronto, they putting on that stuff so that they can't be identified because, I mean, Canada will come for them, for sure. They don't have freedom of speech up there. So I could get with these people really are the real deal.
For some incident that happened in the U.S.,
it's weird. It is weird. But the interesting thing is if it's an op, it's a well-timed op because the backlash against wokeism and DEI is now become a global phenomenon. So it's not just here in the U.S. It's happening in Europe, especially because of the issues they have in Europe, really with Islam taking over some of these European countries.
Yes.
The anti-DEI push is now become, for different reasons, has become a global phenomenon. So I could see up in Canada some people having some opinions about this. It's very interesting. I'm with you, man. It's still hard to believe. It really is still hard to believe that would happen. It's just you generally don't see people on the right walking around wearing black bloc and covering their faces. I mean as a matter of fact, down here, I don't think I've ever really seen it unless it was something where it was suspected that there were ops involved. So Jan 6, you had some folks in black bloc, had their face covered up. But what did we also find out? There was some ops in there, man. There were some operatives in there. And so, I'm with you, man. I don't trust it. I don't trust it. I mean,
and I'll be honest, man. A lot of the accounts I see online saying this wild, crazy stuff, man, I'm like, that's a bot.
Yeah.
I'm like, you got 12 followers. And you've been on, like, this is a bot account.
Yeah. I will say, man, I was thinking it yesterday. I was looking on X, and it's depressing, man. X can sometimes be a bit of a hellhole, man. You look at some of the opinions when I only start thinking that when I know that these are real people saying some of these things.
And some of them are. Yeah, we know some. we know them by name. We know some of them are real people.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're trash.
But man, the bots out there. That's a thing. It's not as bad as it was before Elon took over X, because he made a concerted effort to get rid of some of the bots. But yeah, when you see somebody who got 12 followers, or
and thousands of posts, right?
Yeah, is crazy. Yeah. So there's some of that out there, and then we're finding out some accounts that have a lot of followers where you never even seen this person's face, but they're repping some of these hard line kind of extreme positions, and it just gets me. I'm like, what? Why are y'all listening to this person? This person's not willing to show their face. You don't even know who this is, and you're just following them because they're saying what you want to hear.
And turns out they're getting paid to say some certain things.
Yeah. By Russia sometimes. I mean, some conservative influencers.
Oh, what was her name?
Lauren Chen.
Lauren Chen, dude. I was a Lauren Chen fan, but then
Same.
she did start. But then, like, the whole, was it Israel that she started getting flaky?
Yeah,
on?
she's
she
basically
started going down that route.
Full on anti-Semitic now. It's wild.
Wow. And I just remember going like, she's usually so level-headed and common sense. Why is she taking this Israel position like this? Like,
yeah,
very Candace Owens like. And I'm like, what is wrong with Lauren Chen? Turns out, I had no idea she used to work for Russian state media.
Had no
idea. And was getting paid. And was getting
that
paid
money.
by Russian state media to
not
prop
only
up
that,
her.
she was paying other people.
Yeah.
The Russians were paying other people through her and her husband.
Yeah, they were using them to prop up a network of other and platform other people, and that to the other people had no idea this was coming from Russia.
Yeah.
And they claimed that nothing that they ever did or said was like fed down to them. It was just like kind of affiliations to their show, right? For exposure. But yeah, it's just crazy. Like, this was a full-on Russian op. I'm like, man, Lauren Chen was cool.
Yeah.
Turns out she wasn't.
Not cool. Yeah. So it's wild, man. It's wild. What a wild time to be alive. I mean, Future's out here. She's saying that she don't know if we can expect her to form, well-measured opinions on stuff. Future, I know it's hard. I'm with you.
It is.
But we got to do it.
Yeah. All right. We got one more.
We got one more, baby.
This is a good one.
One more. Yeah.
Make sure you got the audio on.
All right. Let me bring this one back up. Make sure that my audio's on this thing.
Why would I want to belong to and endorse a godless party? Because there is no such thing, and I mean no such thing as a trans child. We have confused children and sick enabling adults.
Next speaker is Peyton Jackson, who will be followed by Carolina Rodriguez.
Good afternoon, Council. When I first announced my run for Congress, I had this random white woman, liberal, walk up to me and ask, well, what about you isn't Democrat? To which I responded, well, besides my skin color, what about me is Democrat? And it was at that very moment that she realized that God gave her enough common sense to ask me about my values. Now, don't get me wrong, I was raised to vote Democrat down the ballot, so when I first started, I would say things like, I'm a Republican, but I'm not a conservative. But now I know all too well I am a full-fledged, hardcore conservative, and I'm proud of it. I mean, my favorite saying is I was born black, not Democrat. But in all seriousness, whenever I began to think for myself politically, the choice was easy. I mean, why would I want to belong to a party whose mission is to infringe on the Second Amendment as if a criminal would ever participate in something like a mandatory buyback? Why would I want to belong to and endorse a godless party? Because there is no such thing, and I mean no such thing as a trans child. We have confused children and sick enabling adults. Why would I want to belong to a party that takes pride in shedding innocent blood? Number one, as if that's not what God hates. Number two, as if there's not a black market for baby organs. And number three, as if abortion clinics didn't start in the hood. Because if you think Trump is bad, you should research exactly who Margaret Sanger was. But speaking of the black community, why would I want to belong to a party who's responsible for the foundation of the Triple K? But it's not just that. Supposedly in the 1900s, the party switched, right? But what never changed, what I noticed never changed.
Man, why'd she say Triple K though?
I didn't know it cut off. Oh, okay.
Oh
But
yeah,
anyway,
yeah.
go find Miss Jackson. Peyton, is it Peyton Jackson? Yes.
Let's see.
Yeah.
Yeah, Peyton Jackson at Peyton Jackson. Peyton K. Jackson.
Okay. Yeah. And so this video has put her on the scene this week. No one knew who she was until this video came out. She's running from some seat in Texas, I believe.
Right.
And so, yeah, she's going to be climbing up the charts here. But I wanted to play it because it resonated with me this week. And that's the same story I've heard from so many other, I was just going to say conservative blacks, right? We are raised in very Christian environments, right? You're raised in church. And yet at the same time, you're also raised to be unapologetically Democrat. And so we grow up this way, and then we become of age. We hit our early 20s, and we start to pay attention to things. And we start to realize, wait a minute, my values don't align with this party that I've been, shaking pom-poms for my whole life. And it's just this disconnect. And then when you do the switch over, people look at you like you're crazy. It's like, I didn't change anything. I didn't change a value. I didn't change a position. I didn't change anything. I just realized the people I've been, cheering for and the policies I've been cheering for are completely against my values. And so to hear her say that in that speech is like, yeah, that's the testimony of so many of us who grow up in the black community where you're told to be black is to be Democrat, right? And Democrats are for black people and Republicans are racist. That's all you're ever told.
Yep.
And like I said on one episode, I went from being angry that George Bush stole the election from Al Gore in 2000 to gladly supporting Bush in 2004. Like in those 4 years, I switched over. But I remember I used to watch Bill Maher all the time, his show Politically Incorrect. I was a Bill Maher fan. Then I look back on it now, I was like, and I was a teenager, and that was my influence. And I look back on it now, I was like, man, I had no idea. But all those shots at the Republicans, I used to love watching like Jay Leno and David Letterman, their opening monologues. It was just all jokes at Republicans, I had no idea that I was really being, I guess, somewhat indoctrinated to think a certain way. And so, yeah, you just grew up that being the norm. And so to hear her say that, I was like, yeah, she's spitting facts, man. That's how it happens.
I mean, what Matt said, she's no longer invited to the cookout. Yeah.
Oh no, she is not.
Cookout invite.
She is not.
Gone.
She is not. I don't know if I said it on this show, but no, I said it on Off Code quite a bit. In many ways, to be black is to be Marxist.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you're not towing the Marxist line, whether you know it's Marxist or not, if you're not towing the oppressed line, if you're not carrying the struggle narrative, you are not invited to the cookout.
That's right. I mean, it's one of the things that I think. Actually, no, I will say it is the thing that holds us back. It is the thing that holds us back. Because
absolutely,
if we would change that mentality and say, let's take a step back and look at, in spite of historical oppression, what has worked and what hasn't worked, and how does that compare with what we believe to be true? And for a lot of folks who, like in America, a lot of black folks grow up in the church. I didn't grow up in the church. But a lot of black folks will grow up in the church. It's less and less and less as the years go on, which is sad. but they'll say they espouse certain things. You say God is good all the time, and somebody else will automatically respond, and all the time God is good. Okay,
Yeah.
but if you take a step back and say, if we believe that's the truth, if we believe that stuff is true, and then let's take a step back and look at what has worked. When we followed biblical values, that's when black folks were thriving.
Yep.
That's when we were on
you
the
said
come up.
you said it's less and less of us growing up in the church. That's the bad thing. I was like, nah, it really is not, because the church is what changed.
Yeah.
Before the communities changed, the church has changed, and that's why
Yeah.
that led to the communities changing.
Yeah.
And so yeah, you're right. But yeah, when you look at our history, what held us together, what made us strong communities, it was holding to biblical values.
Biblical values.
The moment we started to move away from those values, yeah, everything broke down.
Yeah. That's and it's a shame that you get uninvited from the cookout if you point that out. If you point
And
out
I'll
that
say,
it's not the white man's fault, cookout invitation gone.
yeah, I will say this: the more we prospered materially, the more we moved away from our values, because the material gain became the end goal.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And like I said, it wasn't like, even back then there were people who were well off. We see that by think about it, man. The Civil War ended 1865, Emancipation 1865, right? By the 1920s, you've got Harlem. You got Black Harlem. You've got, Tulsa. You've got all of these Black economic centers and communities that are thriving, right? In 40 years from slavery.
Yep.
And so you've had this upper trajectory of the Black community to the middle class and upper class and stuff like that. But it wasn't until around the 1950s where you really started to have a breakdown. And because you had the Great Society, you had all of these government policies come in, you had a lot of stuff that came in, that as more and more people started to gain upward mobility, they started to lose a lot of the values in which they had that held families intact, right?
Yeah.
And so it used to be pressure that if a young man got a young woman pregnant, it was pressure for him to marry her and do right.
That's right.
Right.
It was.
Well, that no longer was a thing. That social pressure no longer existed. And not only that, she can now get government assistance.
Yep.
As a single mother. And so there were a lot of things that contributed to that. But you're right. As the more we moved away from those values, the further decline that the community went. And so when people want to talk about how do we get back to, what we used to have, it's like, I know the answer, but you don't want to hear it.
You don't want to hear him. You don't want to hear him. That's literally what it is, man. And I think that if people would stop having that emotional reaction, because when I have some of these discussions, a lot of the reaction that I get to certain things that I say, they're not coming back with anything solid. It's an emotional response. It's more of a, how dare you question this narrative? How dare you suggest that we are responsible? That's and so I wish that people would respond differently, but I have resolved. Okay, I have resolved that I'm just going to serve the Lord, and as much as he has put, as much as he allows my hand to find to do, I'm going to do, and let's look at the scoreboard in the end.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Not just that, man, your kids are going to benefit.
Yes.
My kids are benefiting from loving 2-parent homes, right? Being raised with particular values and understanding and having self-identity and self-confidence and not rooted in oppression and victimization mindsets to think that the world is out to get them and stuff
Right.
like that. They're going to be a whole lot better off.
That's
you
right.
know?
That's right, man.
So,
Man, so good.
yeah.
Man.
One more segment.
We do. We got one more segment. We got one more thing that we want y'all to take a look at. So here it is. Talk about this book, man. Talk about this book.
So this book, Extreme Ownership: How U.S. Navy SEALs Lead and Win by Jocko Willink. Full discretion, I've never read this book. And I've never read this book because I had to live this book. In my time, I tell people I was never special operations. I don't want anybody to think that I was a SEAL or anything like that. But you have special operation units, and then you have units that support special operations. And I was part of units that supported special operations. And when you get into that culture, or when they invite you into their family, because they don't let anyone support them, only if you're competent, and you have to adopt their culture. And so the first day of training is teaching you what that culture is. And extreme ownership is the perfect way to put it. I'll never forget our first day of training. This is what they taught us. Number one, have thick skin. Don't take it personal. Nobody has time to hold your hand or your feelings, right? That was clear from day one. Number two, don't make excuses, right? Because and don't make excuses. And number three was never throw your teammate under the bus, right? You own it, you take it. And so understanding those leadership principles, understanding that culture, that's what this book is about. And I've heard so many great reviews from people who read this book, who are in the business community, who are in the real estate community, just anywhere where you need to exert leadership. This book is just a great book. Even in your personal life, just understanding what it means to take ownership over things. Because something can go wrong in your life, and you can make excuses for it. You can talk about what someone else didn't do. But at the end of the day, what is it that you could have done right? What is it that you could have done better? You take that ownership of something, or if something is under your wing and you're responsible for it, you're going to take ownership of it because you're going to make sure that it is the best that it can be, right? It's just having this extreme ownership, because if it fails, you can't blame it on someone else. You can't push it off on someone else. And so just understanding that mindset and how it plays out in these guys and how they become the best of what they do because of that mindset, man. And when everyone around you have that mindset, now you cooking, right?
Man.
Yeah, because I remember being in units, man, where you just had that mindset, and when everyone around you have that mindset, man, you can do some things, because you don't have to hold it. I'm not holding your hand. You're not holding my hand. We both know what we got to do. We're getting it done. And at the end of the day, the results are the results. And when you screw up, you own it. Right. Yeah, that was just no excuse making. And so, yeah, that's what this book is about. And I highly recommend it, just because I've heard so many other people rave about it. And I get it, because I had to live it. So,
Yeah,
I know you've read it.
Oh yeah. Oh man. Like I've read that book. I think I read it actually during COVID. I read it during COVID, and it was interesting because I had started reading David Goggins. So started reading Goggins. Can't Hurt Me. And I mean, you want to talk about getting kicked in the balls, man. Like, that book will make you drop every excuse that you have. And I started reading this right after I finished Can't Hurt Me, because I would read Goggins while I was lifting weights. And I had taken this attitude. It's like, hey, no excuses. No matter what happens, I have to get this stuff in. And so I started listening to that stuff, and it fuels you, right? And I started listening to Extreme Ownership, and I realized it had me thinking back to teams that I had been on, in different companies I worked at, and which teams were the strongest teams. And I thought back to the team that I always told people about was it was the team where I was more afraid of one of my peers seeing that I phoned it in on a job than I was of my supervisor. I was in no way. I actually thought my supervisor was going to go easier on me than my peers. We had a policy that everybody brought 100%. Everybody, that we were all going to do our very best work. And it was not culturally acceptable on that team to not always do great work, to do whatever it took to do great work. I mean, there are times where my wife hung out with me at the office because I was going to make sure that the stuff that I put together, the stuff I built, was top notch, and there was going to be zero chance for any of my peers in a meeting, because we would review. We would review. We would have these meetings where we review work when it was going through a handoff phase or was getting ready to go live, or getting ready to be built. And we would get in a conference room and review. And man, the dude who started the department, he had that mentality. We do not phone it in, and that's what we would say. We would say, yo, we don't phone it in here. And you had one time to phone it in. If we got in one of those reviews and we saw that you were basically just doing the bare minimum, you got one of those. You got one of those.
Yeah.
And you just wouldn't survive in the culture. A person who wanted to phone it in just could not survive in that culture. And it's one of it to this day is one of the best teams I've ever worked on. This book made me think about that team the whole time. And that's the kind of team that I want to replicate. And it spoiled me, because when I've gone to other companies, I expected to work on teams like that. And it's rare, man. It's a very rare thing. It always makes you want to be better. Always makes you want to be better.
Yeah, so that's why some of these guys really struggle outside of this environment, because they realize everybody else sucks, right? And then, just everybody doesn't have that same mentality, and they struggle being around other people who don't have that mentality. I'll give an example, and then we can wrap it up. So the way I got into this environment was, they were standing up a new unit. They asked for some help. We sent 10 of us, went down to help stand up this new unit. We were there for 2 years. After 2 years, we came back home, and we took those same tactics and things that we learned down there, and we started incorporating them into our home unit, right? And with the hope of switching over to our home unit being able to support special operations, which happened, right? But this is the thing, when I say they don't let anyone support them, they will fire you in a heartbeat. I've seen them fire units. And so we knew we got one shot at this. And so what we did was, me and 2 other guys, we worked 8-hour shifts for the 3 of us to cover 24 hours for 2 weeks straight. And we basically quarterbacked every mission to make sure that we didn't drop the ball and get fired. One night there was a ball drop, and something went out that wasn't right. And instead of making excuses, what we did was continue to work on it, got it right, send it out hours later. And we say, hey, just look at this. Let us know what you think. We know it's late. It doesn't matter, but we just wanted to make sure that, is this what you guys were looking for? Because you got to remember, we are there to support them and what they're trying to accomplish. The props we got, even though it didn't matter anymore, but the props we got for fixing it, doing it right, and getting it to them and asking them, hey, is this right? we got so much kudos for that, even though we screwed up. But the fact that we owned it, we fixed it, we got it right, they gave us respect for that. And so that's the mindset. It's just having this ownership and not just saying, oh, well, it's too late. Nothing that can be done. You know, I will, maybe next time we'll get it right. Like, no, let's fix it. Let's get it right. And yeah. And that jumped us off. We supported special operations until last year.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's because we just switched complete mission sets. But yeah, that's just it's just a mindset that you have to have. And so yeah, highly recommend this book.
That's awesome, man. You got me fired up now, bro. You got me fired up. Man, that's awesome.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But this is awesome, man. We didn't get a chance to get into what we titled the show, but it was still good.
Yes. We'll repurpose that.
Yes. Next week, guess what we're talking about?
Exactly. If y'all were here for that tonight, come back next week.
Yeah, if nothing big pops off during the week, then that will be our show for next week. At least the headline topic. So
yeah. Oh man, I got one last thing. My bad. We always got to hit this. Y'all make sure that you check out the merch.
Oh yeah, our diverse merch slide. Yes.
This is straight up. This is Canadian government approved right here. This merch slide is Canadian government approved, man. Yo, this is approved. This is approved by the squad. This is man. How can you not get with this, man? How can you not get with this?
Absolutely. Yeah, Trump's first 110 days. You're right, Future.
Yeah. Oh man.
All right, man. Well, let's sign off, man. This is good. You got any final thoughts, man, before we get up out of here?
Man, just thankful. I'm thankful, man, that you had the idea to do this show and that you invited me to do it with you, man. I do think that we really are doing a service for people.
Yeah.
And I know that we're not going to make everybody happy. We get comments, like, oh, are you going to, represent both sides? Are you going to be fair? All that stuff. And so we do try to do that. And, to be honest with you, we want to have people who come from the other side of the aisle on the show. We want to have people, but we need people who are going to come and be able to be measured and bring receipts. And so one of the things that I've found is it's actually hard to find somebody on the left who's going to engage in that way. And I'm not saying that they ain't out there. I'm just saying that Kevin and I y'all don't see the chat that Kevin and I have going. We're asking each other, oh man, let's see if we can get somebody from the other side of the aisle on this. Do you know anybody who would be able to comment on this without being, overly emotional? And we can't think of anybody. We can't come up with anybody. And I think that's a problem. So if you guys know of people who consider themselves on the left, who can engage in a measured way, who can bring receipts, who can come with an informed take, we would love to have them on the show. So that's the thing I want to leave folks with, is that we're not trying to exclude people. It's just the folks who we think who could weigh in and not just pop off or come with an emotional argument. Those people are few and far between.
Absolutely. Hey man, good word. I'm glad that you decided to do this show and that Clarissa said yes. I'm thankful.
I don't know if I'm still married, man. When I go upstairs, I don't know if I'll still be married. I'm just kidding. Oh man. Thank you, Clarissa.
Yeah. And thank all of you. Thank all of y'all for listening, for being on with us. Thank you for all the support that you guys do. Like, share, tell a friend, share on social media. Like I said, check out Devin over at Podium Studios and for all your podcasting needs. Check out the merch store as we just showed. And yeah, and join us next week as we continue to tackle everything in foreign policy and geopolitics and everything in between, But until then, stay informed.
Stay informed, folks. This podcast was filmed at Podium Studios at Marietta Square. Grow your business with turnkey, professional quality podcasting, live streaming, and online events. Don't worry about editing. Don't worry about anything. Just come in and record. Learn more at thepodium.studio. Step up to the podium.